Welcome to TOOKY'S Sidebar, a book club for new wave dudes. I'm David.
I'm Gabe, father of the new wave, and today, for the first time, for the first new year of the Sidebar, we are bursting down the dams of didacticism with the new wave, baby.
And I'm Capitalissimo, and I am ready to hunt you down for Glycon.
And we're back again after a tasteful holiday absence. Thank you for people being patient with that. We had a lot going on. Personal lives, holidays, New Year. We're coming back. A ton of stuff planned. So very excited for that. And we're covering, drumroll, Quarterlives by Cairo Smith.
I like how you make it seem like that's a reveal when they've clearly seen the title of the episode. Oh
yeah, cucked by my own thumbnail, which I've actually already done. So hopefully a little treat for Hoi 4 fans. If you're familiar with the lore of Hoi 4.
The lore is in World War II.
Yeah. There's a minor spoiler actually at the end of World War II in the thumbnail. But you guys held on the fort. I was out with some medical excitement, but fortunately things worked out really well.
Glad to have you back.
Genuinely, did miss chatting with you guys and doing this. I really did super enjoy the Schmidt episode. I think it was a Art of Work Wife guy. I think that was the name of the good stuff.
It was a Craft of Darkness.
Oh, that's it. Oh, I mixed those two up. Mm-hmm. Sorry. But now, fresh fiction. We're back to our roots. We got more fiction planned. I'm going to call this the winter of micro shit, because we got some other short stuff coming out, like shorter books.
Both shorter books and books of shorter works. You might even call them short fiction collections. when I believe we might have said that we would really try to shift back to novels, but I'm not complaining.
Well, listen, the E scene, no one's giving us anything to work with. No one has the stamina, the courage, the strength to write
the
longer
intestinal
works.
Fortitude. No, everyone is blowing their load too quickly on the narrative cycles. But I don't mean to sound like I didn't enjoy this, because I think this is a great way to start the year.
Mm-hmm.
This is fantastic. It's in the first quarter of the new year. I thought it was perfect. It's very, January is a very Zoomer month of the year. I was approached by this by the man himself, Cairo Smith, my acolyte. As the father of the new wave, he's my personal acolyte. I'm the Glycon to his hunter, and he approached me on DMs. He's like, "Hey, I want to do a podcast interview. You want to do X, Y, and Z about this?" And I read the document, like, dude, I don't want to do I want obviously probably do a grab back with him after this, but I was like, I just want to do a straight up episode with this. This is like straight fire. Like the first story alone was like, yes, this is a Gabe-esque. This is Gabe core. This is new wave. And of course, anything to dab on David and his side of didacticism, to burst through that dam. Of course, I had no choice but to choose this.
I'm so glad that we've been back for 3 minutes and you're glazing yourself about reusing the term new wave.
It's perfect prophetic tense. Listen, they were not using it; they're propheticizing my creation of it.
Yeah, and all private DMs, elite human capital, having discussions.
Yeah, honor Levy, Cairo Smith.
I am made up New Year, sir. I am make up New Year.
Yeah, we got taste. We're diverse. We got diverse talent. We got Honor Levy. We got ARX Han. You know what the didactic dudes have, David? You know who you have on your side?
Mm-hmm.
Jackalopians.
Jackheads, let's go. The little jacks. For people that have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, the Book Club from Hell interview with Cairo Smith, really strongly recommend. Friends, blood brothers of the show, the Book Club from Hell. Jack has a interview about Quarterlives with Cairo. Really good. Suggest you check it out, and all their other stuff. But me and Cairo, not at all going to go into it here, but we had a fun essay back and forth, which I'm 2 or 3 months overdue on writing the next entry in response to him. Debating, I don't even know how you would say it, concepts of book clicks or cultural clicks and stuff like that. Writing scenes, which is really fun. And at some point, we're probably going to have group chat or what did you call it, Gabe? A debate or something?
A debate.
Like that. Yeah.
Internet blood sports is back, baby.
A roundtable discussion.
That'd be super fun.
IBS is back over to New Wave.
Yeah, it sounded like
Irritable
when Cairo's
bowel
interview with Jack,
syndrome?
it sounded like he thought I was going to be like out for blood or something. I think he thinks I'm a meaner guy or I'm like a dickhead or something. So
Well, you're one of those two things.
yeah, possibly both in a catty way.
Your dickhead cattiness is really tempered by your cowardice, and it makes you
Yeah,
a lot more
exactly.
personable.
He seems really nice that as soon as you turn your back on me, I read a scathing essay. He wouldn't even do this, but anyway, enough of the side fluff. Before we jump in the meat, though, did you guys want to talk through? There's the foreword or anything else? I guess
Absolutely.
generalities and yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gabe.
Well, I was saying, when January really is the forward for the next months of the year. Another aspect of this episode is that we're called out. If you ever want to get a review from us and don't want to pay whatever $5.99 to get a 4chan ad above the lit board, another way is to literally call us out in your forward of your book. Because a friend of the show and fellow Black Album patriot himself, Matthew Pegas, literally name dropped us in the forward. Glazing us and fellow Tookie alumni, ARX Han. We're finally developed in the E scene so much. We're finally getting incestuous. We're finally developing an incestuous a credentialed network going on. We're all glazing each other in our own little books. It's great.
You as a brown lower Slav from Croatia would love to get incest back on the table, I'm sure. But
Tasteful incest. The third cousins.
yeah, third cousins only. Same as long as you have the same last name. Matt does a great introduction to the book, discussing pointing out some themes of the stories. Obviously, we can't really go too far into the foreword because we are going to be talking about roughly the same things. But definitely, thanks for the shout out, Matt. Go check out our coverage of the Black Album as well. And yeah, he had a good analysis. So, although maybe you should, I guess if you're going to listen to us, it doesn't matter if you read the book if you read the foreword before you read the stories. So, but yeah.
And many of these stories are I believe all of them are available on his Substack. This is Cairo's Substack, Futurist Letters. So I'll definitely link that down in the comments as well. So if someone just wants to check out one or two, in a easy way, that's a way to get a taste for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave, you published for Futurist Letters, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and I want to have Cairo. He hasn't sent me anything yet, but I want to have something of his as well. It's a fun way to cross promo. I have I have a fantasy story I did, sort of a Clark Ashton Smith-esque one called Upon Temple Step. If you want to look that up on there, that's hopefully a fun read. If you're a Clark Ashton Smith fan, you'll probably recognize the inspiration. It's pretty clear.
The incest network grows even deeper.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't pay me though. I refused payment.
We get paid in prestige.
Exactly.
And we don't get any of that either. So.
Listen, we got Daddy Thiel to pay for all the petite bourgeois concerns of financials.
The Pegasus and Thiel bucks hold us over.
He keeps us in raclette toast. Yes. Okay. So, who wants to take the hunters?
Well, I guess maybe that's actually before we dive into Hunter specifically. We did institute, speaking of the devil, the Pegasus Protocol, where we try to go in depth on 2 or 3 stories. I think the first 3 we'll probably go in more detail on, and the rest we're going to discuss them all, but maybe not chew them quite as long. But overall, definitely a strong set of stories. I think there's 1 or 2 I wasn't much a fan of. A lot of them good, and the themes were pretty disparate. There was some really sci-fi ones. There's some more fantastical. There's some very grounded ones. It's hard to do this with short stories. Hard to give generalities. But did you guys, I guess, have any headline up front for somebody thinking about picking it up or diving in?
Well, Quarterlives, in one sense, is literally just about being a Zoomer. It's about the Zoomer generation. It is post 2014 onward, basically. If what drew me into this book at first was one, the banger first story, The Hunters, which we'll get into in a second. The other was the actual mood. Another, I was talking about this previously with y'all before we started recording, is this reminded me in a lot of ways as the Zoomer version of Millennium. Because we know Millennium by friend of the show, Marty Phillips. Of course, that was about millennial generations. Like, oh, my daddy Reno fell off the Twin Towers when the plane was crashing, and all that kind of quote unquote suffering. And about in his depiction of generational trauma, it's literally the millennials try to do something, but an outside force, the boomers, the post-war consensus, literally Satan himself, literally come in and snap their wings. Right? They try to do something in the world, and their wings get snapped from an outside force. While in the Quarterlives, you can see this in the cover of Quarterlives, which I really, really like the cover as well, is that we are always in mid-sketch. We're like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. We're just running our heels above the pavement. We never really go anywhere. It really does like the wind-up thing. It's about being in stasis. We're in a quarter-life crisis. We're like permanently adolescent. We're supposed to be growing into something, but we never actually grow into any form. We're just kind of endlessly growing into ourselves, curling in like a trapped plant. And so that's basically what it is. It's despite all these quote unquote disparate themes, the all themes of these of every story here is that basically people trying to mitigate some sincerity, some growth, some actual purpose via a filter, via like a very Baudrillard, via some kind of simulacrum, either being by turning to a certain creature, through a video landscape, or via spectral getting dicked down by certain spectral deities. It's all about trying to have some sincere sense of growth while being stagnant. It literally is just about. Basically, it's because LOL, we don't have homes. Basically, the boomers have hawked all our two houses, and we don't have any places to put our roots. Basically, it's about the frozen Zoomer generation in a lot of ways. That's why the cover is literally sketched out. It's sketched out figures. It's the very early stages of character design.
I think my take on this and mine's going to be a little more grounded. I think these are all like treatments for short or full length film projects that Cairo either planned to or like abandoned development and thought that they might work out better as a story. I'm going to make a case that one of them absolutely needs to become a feature film, but and it's one that Dave doesn't like, so I'm gonna really rake him over the coals on it. But yeah, I mean, and Cairo is does work in film, so it would, and he has sold stories, so it would make sense that would be the. I mean, maybe this is just a perspective thing, but I think that's probably the genetics of these types of stories, because they're very tight. They have a lot of elements that I think would translate well to another medium, which is not to say that they don't work well as short stories. I think, we've covered other things like Hate Spree, for example, that as a novel was not as good as it would have been as, say, a graphic novel or a video game. But that still had a lot of character. These, I think they could be adapted into things that are really, really special, but they are good in their own right.
There's deep lore actually on his Substack. He has what's the term for it? He calls the reference reader's guide for Quarterlives, where he talks about the inspirations for some of them and when they were written. And I had the same thought, Cap. I was like, am I typecasting him as a film guy? Because I know he's made a film, which I still need to check out, called Screwdriver, I believe. I think you can get it on Prime, so it's just there. I just don't watch very many movies. And I know, he sold scripts, and he works a lot in that field. I was going to mention this later, but yeah, I would say the writing style overall is it's always at a fast clip. It kind of lives and dies on that pace, because I found he was a little bit, if I had to complain, is that very direct and simple oftentimes in language, not in a bad way, but just that's like the preferred, like I could see it coming from a script or into a script, if that makes to your point. and the one or two that I wasn't as nuts about were more like it didn't maintain the pacing, and I was like, okay, it kind of like falls off the rails. But when it does, and it's like on that high wire act, it's like a thrilling ride. And I totally agree. There's 2 or 3 in here that could very easily be adapted into a short film or a full length film or something like that. It seems like his mind is it just kind of works that way. But again, that might just be my bias because I know he's a film guy.
Well, I see Hudson's bad habit of appealing to IRL experience of the author has rubbed off on Cap on too many episodes of LMD. I don't think. Yes, there is, I guess you could say, script kind of DNA to certain aspects of these. But I think a lot of these can stand out if you know Cairo Smith's background. I still think these stand on as short stories on their own.
No, yeah, I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that I think the potential for adaptation, I think is really there, and I'll make the case more specifically later. But that's my beginning note.
All right. Well, should we dive in? Should we dig into the hunt, if we will?
Yeah. You come on, Gabe. You know you want to be predatory, whatever.
Yes, eroticos predatory. Yes, this story. This is
reclaiming the term sexual predator.
Yes, that's what New Wave is about, baby. That's what New Wave is about, baby. Planting your girl's face into the concrete and plowing her behind the Dunkin' Donuts dumpster. That's what New Wave is. Quote me on that. On the official like Urban Dictionary of New Wave. That's the quote right there. So New Wave. So the representative of New Wave, Hunters. So I open up this story. He sends me the doc. I open up this story. I'm like, I knew for a fact we had to cover this because in a lot of ways, if you realize, if you look at the au revoir of the Tuggers, we don't get horny a lot on this pod. We don't really, other than femme gooning. And after reading Hunters as a man, you will say, you know what? I get why women jerk off the literature.
Did you just wait? Did you just say that we don't cover horny stories?
Yeah, Nutcranker.
Yeah, no. Stories that make the reader horny.
Oh,
it's about.
I've been horny this whole time.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's like Nietzsche's. There's this wonderful quote from Nietzsche's letters about my love is like a thorn; it pricks you, right? A lot of the horniness we read about, it doesn't prick the reader. It doesn't induce horniness. You don't want to whip out your cock.
It's about horniness rather than inducing it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, you think this made you want to whip out your cock, Gabe?
Yes, it's got to be really. This was absolutely tantalizing. This was made to titillate, right? The couch scene, everything was about it was great. So the story.
This is where I leave you. Yeah, I did not have that experience, but please do go off king.
Yeah. No, okay. So the main story starts to look like this. It's jury duty for the main protagonist. He's living in Santa Bernardino Valley. He is a dentist assistant, and he is in jury duty for, I believe, a negligent husband. Now, of course, a lot of these short stories, if you read them twice, there's always a divine irony or the cosmic irony when you read the first half. So the jury duty, the trial is for a husband who the wife is claiming, because she has a restraining order against the husband, is claiming that he is stalking her in the parking lot of a mall. And they decide, there's not enough evidence. He was just prowling in the car. And his fellow jury is a 20-year-old girl, Sicilian by Baltimore, quote unquote, which is a great description of her ethnicity. And she's basically an emo manic pixie dream girl. She has like Monster Mash and all these classic Hammer horror film pictures or patches sticked in her handbag or backpack. And, he starts to flirt with her. They watched a Rocky Horror Picture Show. She's listening to the Mitski LP in her trashy-ass, apartment with her queer, non-binary, neurodivergent roommates.
There's almost a bitch you live like this.
Absolutely.
They almost do the meme. He does do the meme, but he doesn't use the phrase. Yeah.
Right. No, it's a very very tastefully online book. So her name is Jane, if I recall correctly. And the thing is, our main protagonist, he's the kind of guy who owns a Lululemon jacket for running. So this man is it's like a bicyclist personality, but for legs. He's like a runner. He is a known jogger. And not the synonym of a jogger. He's white. So he invites her to his place, with his Welsh best friend, who is a stand-in for Matt Pegas. He's Mark Haggis, right? He's a Welshman. Thin, preppy, and always under the gun, as he says. And his friend is much more extroverted compared to the main protagonist. The main protagonist is much more subdued, much more laid back. So Jane comes into the house.
Even, you might say.
No. Okay, I knew you were going to get homosexual about this. There's not homosexual energy to this, right?
Despite the gay sex.
There's no gay sex. There's no gay sex.
There's
a primal bond between men.
It's just two men enjoying each other's strength.
In the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one man giving his body to another, but not in a gay way.
It's not in a gay way. It's like two dogs wrestling. It's a pack. It's a
with
wolf
with
thing.
insertion. Two dogs wrestling with insertion.
There's no insertion's never implied. He makes a coy joke.
You are wrong.
There's no insertion involved.
You are super wrong.
Anyway, so Jane comes over, and it's a very erotic scene.
It's Alice.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Alice. I apologize, Alice. And so she comes in, and he notices that his roommate is much more agentic around her. He's much more, and also he's very sweaty. He never takes a shower. He always watches TV for at least 1 hour before taking a shower. So they both got their stink going on. He's wearing a t-shirt. So they sit on the couch. They start smashing beers together. All just the three of them hanging out. And, I know Dave, as a foot guy, will appreciate this. So she puts her feet on top of our main protagonist's lap. And they start talking about horror movies. And there's this weird thing. I initially thought this was a white man with fangs story. This is very pro-masculine. This is where the men are in control of the sexuality. But if you read the couch scene, in very many ways, these are like horny teenage boys fighting for the attention of a very, very sexually mature girl. Right, yeah. She's in control. She's the mature one, right? And they're very act like teenagers. Even though the main protag is at least 5 years older than Alice, 5 to 3 years older.
They're all 25-ish.
I think he's. I want to say he's at least a couple years older than Alice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so she comes off as much more mature. So he starts taking off her shoes. Her socks are slightly damp. He's very good at the tactile descriptions. This is where it gets horny, right? This is where it gets exciting. This is where it gets virile. Schopenhauer starts coming out of you when you're reading this, right? It's very Schopenhauerian, right? So he's slowly taking off her socks, and she's talking about like horror picture shows. And the thing is, him and his roommate are like competing for her attention, right? They're both of them want to fuck. They both want to fuck this girl, right? And his roommate's trying to basically poach his girl. He's like, hey, so you're into horror movies? And of course, in the main protagonist, like, actually, horror movies was actually the subject matter, right, babe? I remember when we were in jury duty, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, bro.
Yeah. And again, his roommate leans in. She stays where she is. She's relaxed. He's leaning in. He's hunting her already. He's watching a movie about wolves when he walked in. If I recall correctly, there's a wolf reference on television. I can't remember what the
Although if you raised by wolves. Although if you lean in, you are failing the green line test.
That is true. But she likes it because she's into werewolves. This is before Nosferatu. This is Nosferatu, but with dogs, and instead of a bald Eastern European man. So she says, I have a beautiful mane of hair. Thank you very much. I have a beautiful Afro puff. All right, but anyway, so she reveals that
McCormick-esque reference here. Can I read the line here?
Yeah,
go ahead.
When I was 15, she said, not looking at either of us, I really wanted a werewolf, physically. I mean, is he saying it's okay? I mean,
well, McCarthy wasn't around.
As long as the werewolf is also underage.
Well, so she reveals that, and of course, both the guys' eyes light up right at this. And she's like, oh, now it's no longer about the werewolf itself. And it's about the chase. And the dialogue is fucking great. It is porn tier. I mean the porn tier in the best erotic way
in a
possible.
good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on.
I like it that he didn't hold back on that, by the way. It would be easy to, I don't know, have more rationalization, blah, blah, blah. Instead of just right down to business. She's like, she's like, oh, are you going to read it, Gabe?
Hey, yes. You want to do? I want to read it. Do you want to read it, or do you want to try?
No, go for it.
So Blake is the Mark Haggis stand-in. So he says, "Best of luck," said Blake, watching it all. "Finding a werewolf, I mean." "Oh, it's not a werewolf anymore," said Alice. "It's just the idea of the chase, the running."
God.
Blake, who never lost a spark in his eye, even when fully plastered, looked at me. He looked to my hands, on her feet, then back to my face, pushing with a glimmering smile for me to speak. "We could chase you," he said to her after silence. "We what?" I interjected. "Would he be for real, though?" asked Alice, challenging him. "I don't want you to start something and bow out when it gets going." "Hey, I did the LA Marathon," said Blake, pushing his chest out. "I'm a real runner." "She means," I said, "to follow through." I didn't want to have to spell it out to Blake, but I knew I needed her. And this is the way I would get her. I can do it. And then, so this gets horny, it gets turned up. So she reveals this fantasy of, "I want you to chase me, I want you to pin me, I want you to throw my skull into the ground and just pound the shit out of my asshole." Right? She basically says this. Right? So she reveals this to them, and "I want you to take me on the spot." She literally says this. And so the main protagonist and Blake are like, "Yeah, sure," right? But Blake, the main protagonist, again, he's very paranoid. And again, these are, oddly enough, this is what makes it more creepy, is the fact he takes out his camera. He takes out his phone camera, and he's like, "Hey, listen, for real, I need you to just say what you just said for more consent." And again, they're internal, their instincts are agentic, but they're playing like little boys begging for permission. The fantasy of the girl making the first move is the reality here. She's again in control of the entire situation here. And he says something which will be referenced in the last story of this collection. He says something along the lines of this: "She stared at the lens. I stared at her in the screen. The clarity of the digital divide had a hyperreal intimacy all its own." And so she speaks into the microphone. Blake looks like a deer in headlights, and he puts the camera to himself. So they all document this, and they keep everything kosher into, how does it affect you personally, consent theory, basically. Which, I don't know, the camera made it more real for me. It makes it much more intense, you know what I mean? Because there's a sense of like, these are real dudes, like, "Oh fuck, I don't want to get Me Too'd. I don't want to get, this will ruin my reputation," right? Which makes it more scummy.
I don't want to get arrested for rape. Is that like they don't want the public, they don't want someone from the public to see two dudes tackle a chick and start fucking her on the sidewalk and call the police, which
right next to
which very, very hopeful idea about both what people would do if they witnessed that, and very hopeful about about the usefulness of police. But regardless, it's that's the concern.
Did the camera phone make it more sleazy to you? Because for me, it made it more sleazy. It made it more like scummy.
I could picture it. The description was really good of it in terms of like kind of the shocked friend. He's like awkward in front of the camera and just like, shit, we're really doing this. Like, it built up that hype.
Because the reality crash, again, is very believable. I could easily see myself, or see like a kid's I could very easily see myself on that couch, right? Because instead of giving into the fantasy, giving into living in the moment, it's like there's always that nanny state thing. I got to ask permission to do all these things. It's de-eroticized in that one moment.
We live in society.
Yeah, we live in a society.
Yeah,
you can't.
Please
bang your
provide
girl
affirmative consent.
Affirmative consent before you bang a girl next to the dumpster of stale munchkins and Dunkin' Donuts. So he applies affirmative consent. Of course, based Blake comes in clutch, and he whips out his snake icon known as Glycon, the Roman god of snakes. So it turns out Blake is a total pagan bro. They're pagan bros. Both the main protagonist and Blake were into this deity, the snake cult in college. So he tells her to bend. They're both wearing sweetest metal hoodies. They tell her to bend down. He grabs her by the mouth and literally puts it with her own lipstick, draws a pyramid or
draws a triangle on her forehead.
Yeah, a triangle, also known as a pyramid, onto her forehead.
Different shape, but okay.
Pyramids are triangles.
Different shape.
3-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's a if you flatten a pyramid, you get a triangle. If you were to add depth to a triangle, you get a pyramid.
It's triangles on 4 sides and a square on one. That's a pyramid. Anyway,
it's not geography. It's not a geographic podcast. This is
it's a word cell podcast. So we use words right. Well, 2 of us do.
Let's get to the fucking.
Go on.
Right? Let's get to the fucking.
All
right.
I'm dying.
And the descriptions are great. I'm surprised you didn't want to read out the sock scene where he takes out the slightly damp sock off her feet. Yeah, again, the build up on the couch is great. That's where he gets horned up, right? And then they start running. So they give her a little lead because she's got lady legs, and it makes her slower, right? Well, the men, him and Blake. And the thing is, the main protagonist, he has very Mishima hyper edit wave dreams while being like hit by a car while running. He loves to run. These men love to run, right? And so that he describes themselves both breathing and panting like fucking dogs, right? Their breaths in the air, and they're panting, and they're chasing her, and they're running, and they're living the best. They're in the moment. You can feel the blood pumping in their fucking veins where they're going here. And they finally catch her. And he doesn't remember. Everything is a blur. No one remembers who grabbed who first. All they know is that she's on the ground. They have her way with her. And it's like the moment of pure and utter visceral embodied ecstasy, right? It's a great scene. He leaves the actual scene up to interpretation. So you're expecting more of a Japanese Oriental, hentai-esque description of this scene. Sadly, he does not. He leaves it to the reader's imagination. So the thing is, they get actually a power up. They get their endurance stats get increased. It's like in New Vegas where you get the well rested perk after sleeping with a prostitute. They get that perk basically. So for the next 10 days, their running stats have never been higher. They feel more relaxed at work. They do it. I think it's 2 weeks before she texts the main protagonist again. It's at least a week or at least 2 weeks before she text the protagonist to say she wants to do it.
They don't know if it's going to be a one-time thing or not.
Yeah. And then she's like, let's do it again.
Yeah. You guys free Friday.
It becomes a regular thing for them, and they start training for it, and they're much more euphoric, much more relaxed, and they're open to being. They don't get chained to the closed door. They have no shame with their bodies. Their bodies are being put. What
this
they're
is
built
between
for.
the men specifically. Like the dudes start walking around with their dicks out. Yeah,
the inner planes of the Indo-Aryan steppe are rejuvenated into their fingertips, into their nerve endings. Their nerve network of their bodies are the Indo-Aryan steppe here, right? They feel comfortable in any space. All space is own space. Right, they feel comfortable in their bodies again. Right, they're like again, they're honestly like boyish childhood. They have a boyish childhood charm to them now. They're more relaxed at work. They don't care about work as much. Right, they're willing to be naked.
I don't know, boyish is the word I would use for this situation.
Adolescent, quarter life, exuberance instead of crisis. All right, they're alive. Damn it, they're alive in this. Mm-hmm. Well, would you agree with this? But the main protagonist is still shy though, because Blake is still agentic. He's still the agentic partner of the two.
Is this your word of the day?
What? No, it's an agentic story. It's an.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't. You're just saying he's the one who's in control now.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Well, yeah. Blake is. He is 100% more into it because the main protagonist. He's a shy guy. He knows how to flirt. Like he's still socially aware enough to know how to flirt with a girl properly. But he always waits. Even on Instagram, he says on Instagram he always waits for them to send the first move. While Giga Chad Blake, he's the one sending out DMs left and right. He's sliding into those DMs, right? And he's still a shy guy. And of course, to have a close encounter into Duncan's, he's having halfway into Doggy when a hobo, a peeping Tom, bursts their intimate moment. Does he chase the hobo guy? I don't remember if he chases the homeless guy. He doesn't catch the homeless guy, but he doesn't get the
homeless guy runs
right.
And then they run.
Yeah, and he does. And the thing is, he didn't even get to come, right? So he got blue balled.
Yeah, I think their running stats are actually low after that, and they're like, "Oh, I don't feel so good, bro. I'm not."
Yeah, the perk wears off. The well-wested perk wears off, right? And so
the blue ball perk.
So the main protag looks at Blake. And he's like, "Well, you can haunt me." Right? he does the emoji, the embarrassed emoji where they touch the tip of the fingers together. He does that basically. You can haunt me, and this is where Cap is doing the vulgar reading. Like, LOL, gay bro, right? He's doing the gay analysis, the vulgar interpretation of this, right? So Blake initially just tackles him, Then he playfully marks him with the symbol of a glycon. And from on, it gets more intense. But it's a brotherly bond. It's like two wolves playing in the snowy field together, basically.
I gotta find this fucking page.
Yeah, I reread this story twice. There's no penetration involved, other than, of course, the lipstick upon his skin. And so they're living this pagan polycule kind of thing, and until it becomes a legit pagan polycule when Alice comes around, and she has a full job now. She's wearing a.
The first time, it was actually just a tackle, a moment of panting together as he pinned me to the ground, and that was it. The second time, he had marked me with a triangle for glycon, and he didn't hold back. It barely affected our daytime relationship, believe it or not. We were still roommates more than anything else. He was still texting girls. I was still liking their stories on Instagram and waiting for them to initiate. I'd never been the best with bold flirtation. Yeah, dude, I don't know. Read the subtext. I've met I've met authors who use subtext, and they're all cowards. Like,
I mean, he didn't hold back. That could mean a hug.
yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. He tackled him, but he tackled him in the first case, but he didn't hold back in the second one. There was a real cuddle puddle afterwards.
It was a literal struggle cuddle. Like,
Yeah, it could be.
I'm gonna cuddle you, bro.
It could be biting.
You so good.
Because remember, Alice bites the main protag in the first time they do it. Right? It could be biting. He doesn't say he marks him in his schmidt.
No, he didn't.
Like
He
that.
didn't hold back. Man, it's so obvious. It's so clear.
I hold Cairo to a higher standard.
It's so clear. It's just that Cairo is a good enough author to not say. And then he rammed his cock in my ass and to completion.
Gabe was just too self-inserted, Cap. He was self-inserted. This guy, he couldn't handle him being, the recipient.
Yep.
Listen, as any aristocrat of the soul, as any eroticos preditore, obviously I very, very much felt very familiar. I got to know the story biblically, right? It was I cleaved onto this cover story, and but it's a great story. So the girl comes up, Alice comes in, the Baltimore Sicilian comes in. She's wearing a summer, like that trad dress that's trendy on Twitter. She's wearing a trad flowy summer dress, and she got a new job in an art exhibit, and it's paying very well. And she's like, oh my God, Glycon manifested this for me. Like, this is totally like we're giving Glycon energy. I'm getting Glycon vibes from this. And the main protagonist is kind of jealous of this. He's like, well, I was a good Glyconer. I was Glycon's top guy at Etiquette Good Luck. A Glycooner, yes, exactly. Yeah. I was his top coon. I was his top Glycoon. Right? And I do love the pagan motifs. Like Cairo does a very good job of using adjectives or using terms that are fitting to the setting and the theme. Because he calls himself, there's a certain satyr bliss when he finally gets up the courage to properly kiss her, Satyr. Because when he finally kisses her in this moment, he asks permission to kiss her. Yeah, again, very much a boyish, very current day understanding sexuality, and because he realizes they don't have a real relationship. What they do at night is not who they are. It's not them. It's something beyond them. It's something internal to them. It's an internal cosmos, rather than anything that their minds understand or register. So he sees her in this flowery dress, and he says, I want to kiss you. And then, they commence a real, authentic relationship in the daylight. Instead of there's a keep it Chthonian, they put it up to the Apollonian sunlight of the mind. So they kiss, and they eventually tastefully fuck. They don't fuck, they make love. They make love on the couch. And they have dinner at Carl Jr.'s, a very trendy place in San Bernardino's. So they have a tasteful cheeseburger and milkshake. And Blake comes home, and again, he's more into it than the main protag. Main protag just got his Sartre's confidence in this moment to actually have an open relationship.
I knew it would come back.
I knew it would come back. I knew he couldn't hold it together.
He mentions a Sartre in this.
Satyr. You said it right the first time.
Yeah.
I
gotta throw something in for the Gabe Goonies. You always gotta play.
It's a callback.
You saying Sartre instead of Satyr is a callback.
The Gabe Goons will appreciate the old Goons. So she appreciates this gesture, and this is beginning of an authentic pagan polycule. So Blake puts in black knapsacks on their head, takes her Audi. I think she drives an Audi. Puts her in their car, drives 3 hours into bumfuck desert, and it's this one moment of just letting go. He describes Alice putting his hand on her hand on his thigh, and it's not
well, specifically
scared.
they have bags on their head.
Yeah,
like he's just to be clear, this is like almost like a semi-abduction. Like they volunteer for it, and he also mentions like, oh yeah, by the way, he's fucking me too. I'm also a quote unquote sacrifice.
It's a complete moment of abandon. It's a celebration of fate. Let Fortuna carry me onward, and he totally embraces it. And he does the William Gibson when he finally opened the door. He says, the city glowed gray like television static coloring the western corner of the sky. For the first time in years, I look up and actually saw the stars. So they're so in the desert, you actually can see the stars. And so they find a cave, and he set up the candles. Like Blake is fully into this kink. He is total kink master at this right now. He's fully bought in. So Blake set up candles, and if I recall correctly, he actually captures a coyote.
The sacrifice.
Yeah.
Dude, was I the only one on the edge of my seat? Like, is it going to be Matt Pegas in the fucking cage? Call back to Black Album.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that would have been hilarious.
That would have been so meta.
Well, maybe
the author.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, because maybe it is. But, clearly also, they do acid. So Blake gives them acid, and so they are starting to trip, and the description of this coyote in the cage makes it very clear that it is a fucking dog, not a coyote.
Well, it's more lame if it's just a dog.
No,
right? But
it's worse if it's a dog. It's definitely a dog. It's not more lame. No, it's not more lame. It's more depraved.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's cooler if it's a coyote.
Okay. It's definitely a dog. The subtext is that it's a dog, and he couldn't tell because he was on acid.
This is coming from the person who's reading homosexual themes into the story. I would not.
Yes, I'm reading homosexual themes into the butt fucking.
It's never mentioned. Never mentioned, by the way.
Yeah, the word butt fucking is not in it.
Anyway, so they kill this coyote. They slaughter a coyote for our boy Glycon. And
delicious blood.
And it's the beginning of a new dawn for their lives. It's the beginning of
Alice slits its throat, and they play in the blood, basically.
Yes, and she's the one who slits his throat. Yeah. She's the one who actually takes a step. Yeah, she's in control. The feminine is in control here. It's still. I would not say Longhouse, because the men aren't in control. Blake is just finally glad he finally gets to share his freak, basically, with Alice. And the main protagonist is finally glad to be part of a sincere relationship. He finally gets his confidence, and they form a functional pagan polycule, and it really works out for them. Actually, they have a prosperous lifestyle, and they make it work.
Well, she leaves like right after or shortly after, right? She goes overseas, and then
but then they start doing this every 6 months. They get back together to do a sacrifice to Glycon.
And with a hobo, right? That's the plan, implied plan.
It's sort of been escalating, and the story ends with where are they now? And they've all like experienced like generally increased fortunes, right? Blake the least.
Gabe's talking about the feminine dominance really highlights that to me in a way it didn't when I first read it. As the only person that didn't get penetrated with diameter is the only one. His only success is he dates a woman, like a rich and powerful woman.
Yeah,
like an actress
his life starts. I mean, it gets a little better, but he's like rewarded with a female,
more powerful female who will favor him. Whereas the two that were penetrated get success of their own. They both get a great job or something like that. Like she becomes an art gallery lady. Yeah. Well, she becomes an art agent, really. Like she gets a profit share with a working artist. So it's a lot of money,
especially for a girl in her early 20s.
And basically, it's sort of left on the note that there are. I mean, here the last line in the story is there are a lot of souls in Los Angeles that wouldn't be missed. And so I mean, they're going to start sacrificing people to Glycon. Is the absolutely explicitly stated thing. I'm not going to rely on Gabe's inference and his ability to infer things. But
well, no, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Duh. They're going up the ante. They're going to start the predators of men. They're going full that thing, and it's intoxicating. You get intoxicated with them, right? Yeah, it's an extremely well crafted first story. It's an absolute banger of a story. Even if you don't get kinked on by it, if you don't get turned on by it sexually, even as a story itself, it's extremely well crafted. It has energy, it has momentum. It's very fast paced, and it does well for multiple readings. Because at first I read this just as a sycophant. A second one, I noticed more of the gender aspect of it. Because yet again, it's especially that couch scene. They're much more boyish, and she's much more controlled than either of them in that scene. And of course, the ironic cosmic flavor, the cosmic irony of the beginning with the subject matter of the jury trial was, of course, a tasteful treat as well. And I think most of these stories can do very well with a second reading. I would say, for most part, they're worth at least two reads each. At least, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And the deep lore on this one is he wrote this right after he met Pegasus.
Yeah, they both lived in San Bernardino, actually.
Yeah. Inspired by Dragon Day. I think also he had read Dragon Day, which infamously has a
incredibly graffic homosexual rape.
Which I guess actually has nothing to do with this story because there's no gay sex. So
yeah. Well, there's no rape. There's no rape.
It's part of the larger Dragon Day universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the homo fash is in full effect. Yeah, I mean, I will say that certain parts of this did give me the same sort of discomforting, like ominous feeling that Dragon Day did, although to a much lesser degree. But yeah, I mean, there's a Pegasian flair to it.
Ominous is no way I would describe this. I would describe this as intoxicating, enthralling, exhilarating. It's an exhilarating story. You feel like you're with the two guys as they're panting and they're on the hunt, they're on the prowl. You feel the pavement pounding your soles with your feet. Like
I pray this never ends up playing in like a courtroom.
Yeah, it's like, and so you see, Your Honor.
Eroticos Predatore.
Yes, white man with fangs. This is a white man with fangs story. This is the white man's sexuality. You could just take women. You could just do things. Women are free.
Okay, all right, I'm pulling the plug on this one. Okay. I go ahead, Cap.
No. Go for it.
This is why you never be above the didactic well. This is what New Wave is. This is New Wave.
Embrace the hunt for women. No, I would just echo what you were saying, Gabe, though, overall. And you, Cap, just really strong story, great pacing, thematically strong. It was just, banger. Long story short, banger. Let's move on. And again, just, about 50, close to an hour in, one story down. So we're going to do another deep dive of Network States, which might be my favorite. We'll see.
Agreed.
I think it's a gem in terms of like what it approaches. So let me describe this one, I guess, conceptually, and then talk through a little bit of the chain of events. Network States is actually inspired by a Hearts of Iron. For those unfamiliar, Hearts of Iron is like a grand strategy game where you play World War II, the great powers or even minor powers. And Cairo just had this idea. I think he comment on the Reddit or there's something like that where like it was just this idea he had of an ongoing massively multiplayer, very slow, as in like every day is a
real
game
time
day.
Yeah
1-to-1 real time. Shout out Jeffro Johnson. He of Hoi Force, you playing World War II from 1936 or whenever the game starts, and so he literally just applied that to a story, and then the framing device is there's a reporter writing about this and doing some interviews with people that are involved in this community, and they take it very seriously. So not only is it a real-time, no pause game state, like global game state, but every nation has people that control like trains and, like logistic administrator.
Incredibly granular responsibilities.
And it sounds fucking epic. Like I will say, as I was like halfway through this, I was like, fuck, this would be really fun. I think there's a lot of potential. And actually, he mentions in his about the book, he's like, yeah, I've gotten like a dozen emails of people saying like, is this real? Like, can I play this?
It's hyperstition into reality.
Yeah, I would be down. The story, the events of the story kind of play out in a way I think like it would happen actually, because, and feel free guys to jump in. I'm not going to go through exactly everything, but just the broad bullets are, it starts before like this great drama unfolded. It talks about the concept of this Hoi 4 mod, the first interviewee is a British Empire. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I left the Americans for the Brits because this is they're still pre-war. Like the war is like like America's not entered the war yet. Right. And so, yeah, there's all these communities and discords and signal chats and whatever the Chinese one. And it's a really cool, in terms of like a way of exploring the virtual space in a way that wasn't boring, which I just found fascinating. I thought he did an excellent job of making it interesting, and you can feel each different community's reflection. Did you guys have any, I guess before we get into the plot stuff, like thoughts on that?
I 100% concur. It's very accurate to it's the internet. It's accurate to, it's an amalgamation of certain internet cultures. You have meme magic of the early, he will not divide us. The old, I guess you could say, 4chan meme magic of the internet culture, internet in real life, the Charlie Hebdo things, the pools closed. It's very much, because the internet it bleeds into reality in the story itself. It very much is that early meme magic days of the internet. And it bleeds into reality. And I think it got that voice down. It got meme culture. The Chinese have the heel slut raining down anti-aircraft guns and say death to the Japanese devils.
Yes.
It got the Discord names are great. The Fuhrer, the leader of the Axis powers, is named Big Iron
guys. Yeah,
yeah,
our guys.
Yeah, he's a humanities professor in Idaho, and his name is Big Iron 6.
Yeah, doesn't remind me of anybody I know at all.
No one at all. And actually, Cap, you have beef with this story. Cap, what's your beef with this story?
I don't really have beef with this story. It's just when we were talking about this before the show, I said that it hit a little close to home, and it's because I was. This is basically EVE Online. This is basically EVE Online that they're describing. They're describing something that moves at, the pace of real life with grand strategies and different sub-communities who are in charge of various things that are, tend to be sort of broken down along country or at least language lines. And then real life espionage, which I'm sure David will get into because it's fucking hilarious. Relating to, like basically 100% prompted by in-game concerns. And so I don't know if you guys are aware of any of the wars that happened in EVE Online, but like literally 15 years ago, the Something Awful corporation, Goonfleet, was the most powerful corporation arguably, but was one of the most powerful corporations in EVE Online. And when you say that, I mean like the economy, if the ISK was sold, the in-game currency, if the in-game currency was sold for real world dollars, it would be, a multi-million-dollar company, right? So just the value of the economy that Goonfleet was running at the time, and they were not by any means the only corporation of that size. But like I remember being on the Something Awful forums at the time and being in the chats about various things, and like I would go, and I was not like the head of logistics. I mean, there were people who were responsible for making propaganda. There were people who like Stahlgren was responsible for making propaganda. When one of the guys who was actually like sort of the Secretary of State of Goonfleet, he literally died in the Benghazi attack. Like he was an actual Department of State guy. He was an actual State Department
he went
guy
home
who
to do more Department of
but
State
he was
guy.
in Benghazi and died in the attack.
Oh my God.
And so like these were real people with real jobs. Obviously, I was much younger at the time, so I was just starting in my career. But when I would log on, I would like hop in my interdictor and go camp a warp gate to try to see if I could catch a capital ship, to then call in tackles for like the broader fleet to come take them out. Because the war was fought basically monetarily. Like you inflict because you can't actually kill anyone, obviously. But there was espionage that resulted in the loss of other corporations, where someone would just get control of the corporation, transfer themselves all of the money in the corporation, sell it to ISK bots, and then just dissolve the corporation. And I mean, and this was perfectly, like, it's actually legal, things like that. So real world thefts with real consequences happened in game and had this sort of fallout. So I've lived the network state. I have lived this story. And yeah, it's fucking cool. Don't get me wrong. But let's get into the actual sort of the main plot of network states.
Yeah.
The main plot is your biography, apparently. This is your
It's literally
your story.
Yeah.
Your flashback.
Yeah.
You're Dongwaffen.
Absolutely fucking not.
Take one for the team. He never did say he did do it. Speaking of gay stuff, maybe a running theme here.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was running deep cover.
Doing gay stuff for non-gay reasons.
It's done over a series of interviews where he's and chat interviews in the chat where he's meeting in person with the one guy who was from America and went to the Brit server. And America in this timeline is slightly different from the real timeline in that what is it? The Germans did not invade when they were supposed to in Russia, right? Like there was like a few other things.
No. Yeah, they weren't. They didn't have.
They take Stalingrad. They actually do take Stalingrad. They take Paris by paratrooper.
Stop.
We're saying it didn't happen yet. That's the timeline is off because they didn't do Barbarossa when they were supposed to.
Things don't happen at the exact the exact times are not the same, but like they have to do Barbarossa.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar with Hoi 4 or Hoi 4 Lits, you have like kind of tech trees that you progress down that force you or they strongly point you, especially like in the original game, that direct you to certain courses of action, like you claim certain territories and stuff like that. And so it references in that this is a mod, but even so, there's like debates about what the mod are, should we have a more open-ended because the Germans feel like they're being railroaded into a failing, like a losing state because of actual history.
Yeah, and the mod is called Hoi Mert. That's how you say the mod. It's Hoi Mert. Or Hoi Mort.
Okay. Kind of reminds me of like a mud too. That's another similar-ish thing. I don't know if you could. Well, I assume Cap. You're a mudhead for a mudhead, but
you're a mud shark.
Yeah. The exact plot for
multi-user
points,
dungeon,
though,
a multi-user dungeon, and early precursor
like
to precursor to MMORPGs.
But really, for me, the meat of this is in like the style of the delivery and this, experiencing these little like chats and how people present themselves and their real world counterparts, because he meets the the first guy, San Fran guy. Then he meets, I think the rest of a lot of it's in chat. And then eventually he meets the Fuhrer, and and he's supposed to, was it Dongwaffen is supposed to be there, but he's not. And then talks about some of the differences where the communist, the Russian or Soviets, like they won't speak to anyone. So they're like this sort of secluded, and they're not committing to either side yet. And also the Japanese
are also like incredibly insular. Like
and they're getting wrecked by the Chinese.
And they're losing. Yeah, they're losing to China. They have failed to rape Nanking.
Oh yeah, isn't that another historical divergence too? Like the
yes.
Japanese and Germans have not allied the way they were supposed to ally.
The Japanese are just they're like waiting for Nazis. Please, Germany, save us.
Please save us. Of course the Chinese are just racking up. Which I could picture. Haven't played the game. I am not like a hoi for like dude, but I played a bit. The fulcrum of the story, like where it all focuses, is Dongwaffen does a IRL scheme where
gay
there's
ops.
There's
a transsexual individual where he literally gay ops this trans.
He goes to a democratic social. He goes to a DSA meeting.
Oh yeah,
pretends to be a democratic socialist to seduce the what was the name of the person?
It's not Kakarot Lenin. Kakarot Lenin's another person. I forget. Hold on.
I thought it was Kakarot Lenin.
Was it Kakarot Lenin?
There's a lot of usernames in this.
We're reference to Kakarot Kulak on Twitter, I assume.
Yeah. It was probably. I mean, it was. Yeah. Anyway, that character gets seduced, and then after they bone, the Dongwaffen gets onto his
Axis or the German
gets
Nazi
onto the commies computer and then emails the entire Soviet battle plan to the Germans.
I think her name is Vera V. That's the user, Vera V.
That is her name, Gabe.
Her name.
Her.
That's her name.
Her, Gabe.
That's how we're playing this.
Meme arrow her.
I guess we're woke, right?
Yeah, and the dialogue, and of course, all the normies are talking about like the normie libs on, which is the burger. I think it's burger chat, which is the Americans.
Yeah, it's the Americans.
The internet. He gets the internet lingo very correct. The vibe of internet lingo very correct. Mm-hmm. He's like classic fast, least gay Germany player. Rule 6: no transphobia, please. You will be muted. How was I transphobic? It's like.
Right.
It's a great normie joke. It's normie Discord behavior there.
Yeah.
Speaking of my lived experience, I was having flashbacks during this part to the lit Renaissance collapse, and there was just like people getting just doxxed constantly and all sorts of gay ops, and just the way like a 50 billion people jump online, and it's just like the many people are typing kind of scenario. Really well captured in this whole like the Fallout section. Of Dongwaffen's escapade.
Yeah, because it captures that, like, Rucka Rucka Ali singing I'm a motherfucking Sargon to Carl Benjamin in a tavern after he told Anita Sarkeesian to her face to fuck herself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It very much is. It captures Gamergate era internet, the early, like, again, meme magic is real in his universe. It really is. And it gets that vibe very, very well. Everyone's possessed by the geist of their... Because he even says, and later on in the pool party, he says something along the lines, this is not a culture war, it's not an internet war, this is a spiritual war, this is war. These people are generally possessed by the geist of this movement. They're actually living out at this point. They're living through Hoy Mart, or through Hearts of Iron. I was going to say Hearts of Iron, damn it. They're living out through this mod. You see bits and fractured pieces of this in like Kaiserreich communities. If you all know the Kaiserreich mod, it's the alternate World War I mod. And you see people like LARPing Kaiserreich. You see people making cosplay for Kaiserreich. And these people get so committed to it. And it's a certain hyperstitional wish fulfillment, because it's living out the boomer truth regime, basically, or the academic current term, like post-war consensus. And And near the end of this, I got pissed, by the way. I actually wanted to punch pretend FDR in the face. Because, of course, the Americans are the most normie-friendly ones. They're the ones who have chicks at their IRL parties. Of course, none of them actually play the game. You know, you want to punch them, right, for just being frat boys, right? Basically, you just got into the game post-COVID. Of course, they're not there since 2018. They've been running this mod since 2018, but they're posers who just got after it got big after COVID, basically. They mentioned the lockdown very organically. And so it becomes a big thing on Twitch, Trapgate. It's called Trapgate in the universe. Of course, it's called a Dongerwaffen situation, like politically.
On YouTube, yeah. When they bring it onto YouTube, they have to call it the Dongerwaffen situation because you can't say Trapgate.
Yeah, the internet. The internet in this version of the internet, it's 2024, but the lingo is because remember, trap was a normie term. It was a LOL. But it was safe edgy. If you remember, like LOL traps. Trap was the first casualty of big woke, I guess you could say.
Big woke.
God.
Big woke. What?
You mean like the transsexual movement took traps from us? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it did. You remember? I remember the day
Tomboys and traps.
Yeah, traps was. I remember very vividly.
They took the term traps. They literally transed all the tomboys.
Yeah, it's the sissy hypno meme, right? But the helmet, exactly. And I remember this. So a lot of the lingo is not current internet lingo. Ooh woo, especially the access. The access is very of a certain era of the internet, especially the access. And of course, the Futurist
too.
Yeah, Dongerwaffen is actually 41. He works at a gun store, and the Führer is basically Michael Millerman. He's a humanities major. He's a humanities professor, working in Idaho. And
none of it feels like what's her name's I is for internet. You remember that from Honor? None of it's like clangs like that though, in terms of feeling out of date.
It doesn't. Yeah, I agree.
And the thing is, he doesn't. Again, the momentum is very fast in this story, and I want the story to be fleshed out. Out of all of these, I think this could be. I never read a Don DeLillo novel, but what I imagine a Don DeLillo novel is, I think this could be our generation's white noise. I think network states could actually be. I was talking this to Kat before. I think you can make a 300-pager an ensemble protagonist. Each protagonist gets their own chapter.
But the whole way that this is written is like in a journalistic framing, right? And I mean, you couldn't maintain this framing over that length.
True, you had to change the framing, but the overall story is that we're all possessed, we're all haunted. And if you look at all video game culture, at the foundational myth, right? These people are living. It's very male coded, by the way. We're all being possessed by the. Yeah, it's very male. In a later story, I'll contrast this because the story after this actually mirrors the story in a very odd way, in a very female-coded way, but it's still the same nerve, I guess you can say, because we're all haunted by the World War II. World War II is our foundation; it's our genesis. You change the foundation myth. At the end of the day, the yearning for alternate history, the reason why it attracts such intensely autistic people, alternate history in particular, attracts a very, very kind of personality. It's because if you change, it's like a time travel film. Yeah, it's what if by changing.
What if Odin asked me to eat his cum?
If the war went differently, my mother wouldn't have forced me to rape my sister with a phone book.
Jesus, Gabe.
Actual quote.
No, that's actually a great quote, by the way. That's not Gabeism.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. But there's if you like Atomic Hearts or Tanky fan fiction or all these at the heart of alternate history sci-fi is the wish to change the genesis of humankind. Because let's be honest, for the average person, World War II is our genesis. Period.
Yeah.
Not just for culture, but clearly our genesis, capital G genesis.
And the protagonist asks the head of the Führer about this, and that's more or less his reasoning, right? At the bar at the end, he's like, just. You want to make history different. You want to actually do affect some real change that you can't in your real life. And this is he saw this as his opportunity to do it. That's why he was so committed. At least that's the reason he gives.
Yeah, it's like, what if I can win this thing? Like, what if I can change the outcome? Right? I feel like I can't change the outcome in anything else in the real world, but maybe I can change the outcome of this conflict and make it not a foregone conclusion.
Right. It's very hopeless
And like,
romantic.
and also like, yeah. And to be clear, like these guys obviously are not German nationalists. they're like they're just Americans who are.
They're all Americans.
Yeah, virtually
he makes a
everyone.
point.
Yeah. The Russians are like many of the like the Japanese and Chinese are actually Japanese and Chinese, but virtually everyone else is just sort of from wherever. And
yeah, and let's be honest. There's definitely white tanky. There's white Maoists. Most Maoists I know are white.
Oh yeah,
and there's no way Japanese. There's no way in hell it's only Japanese people in the Japanese parts of Iron
I think
Four.
the weebs are in there somehow.
well they all
Absolutely.
well maybe, but they all have to speak perfect Japanese in the context of the story. Otherwise, they'll be considered spies.
Oh yeah, he mentions
Yeah.
that if you don't speak fluent Japanese, you're called a Western spy.
Yep.
And they're smart enough this time around not to do a Pearl Harbor. Yeah, again, they have to act within realistic military goals. For example, the invasion of Paris does not go down. They don't do a blitzkrieg. They do a paratrooper spam, basically.
Yeah.
They paratroop invade Paris.
Well, and the blitz over England is more difficult as well. Like, rather, the Germans do better over Paris, but apparently they also didn't. The British also did much better at Dunkirk. So
yeah, that's the trade-off. And so people are metagaming. They're like literally because they're haunted by this. Again, they're possessed by the spirits. The spirits of that age start to haunt because Big Iron 6 starts to talk like a German nationalist. He calls the Allies the imperialists. And at the end and it's more poignant with the Americans at the end, with the American pool party, when the normies fucking show up, right? People on around like Sherman posters, like burning down Georgia Sherman posters, right? All the NATO tards, basically, all the classical libs start showing up, and it's a frat boy, the American president. I don't know how he got into the war. He appeals to Mother Britannica. So instead of FDR being a lip cuck, this version of FDR, who's a frat boy basically, who hosts a giant party at his mom's house or his parents' house.
Yep.
And at least some of the people on the American side, at least some of them commit to the bit and actually wear fedoras. But of course, 99% of them are fucking frat boys who don't actually care about the game. They're partying. They got like a synthwave edit of FDR's face going on. And they announced finally America's going into the war. Even though it's kind of pointless because the Germans, after Barb, they actually take Stalingrad this time around. They actually pinch and move Stalingrad. They actually have superiority over Russia this time around, and they managed to take Stalingrad. So at this point, because we're recording it by now, I guess if we were talking in real life dates, they would be early mid 43 right now as of recording this episode. So the Soviets will basically be gone at this point, in IRL terms, because if we now know for a fact due to Lend-Lease documents, if they did not have Lend-Lease, by 43 the Soviets would have actually folded. So the Americans this time around, they're much more trad.
Well, and also in this narrative, the Soviets were mostly giving all of their shit to the Chinese, and so they didn't have any anti-air guns by the time Barbarossa happened.
Yeah, and they spam the anti-air guns. That's why the Chinese meme the anti-air guns with the heel slut mercy, right? And of course, the entire Russian officer corps gets purged, mirroring the real-life officer corps purge. But then they rely on the British. It seems, not to be an anti-Anglo-Saxon, not to be full Putin here, but in this universe, it seems the Brits are behind most of the war.
Pulling some strings, the eternal Anglo. Yeah.
The eternal Anglo. They're pulling strings to the Americans. If you notice, the main protagonist, or the guy in the Silicon Valley, the Bay, he says most Americans come from the Bay, Silicon Valley, and he defects to the British. It seemed
they were propping up the French resistance as well.
They're propping up the French resistance.
So
also.
all the major fronts are British-led until the Americans join inevitably. But
yeah, at the behest of because if you notice the frat boy FDR, his reasoning for joining the war is to save Mother Britannica, to save the motherland. He's going full woke right, I guess you could say. He's saying, we're Anglo-Saxons. We're going to fight with our mothers. We're going to fight with our homeland. And the Commonwealth chat, we briefly get to see the Commonwealth Discord of the Brits, and we briefly see them. They're all very calm, and they're having a ball after Operation Bar, but they're having a ball, basically. They love what's going on. So everyone becomes a parody of themselves instead of in real life where the Brits were ideological retards in both World Wars. In this one, they're actually Machiavellian, self-centered. Right? They're actually doing it for war for proper reasons, which is self-interest. Right? They actually are being the Anglo meme for once. And,
I actually am going to argue that I think this would actually do well in a longer format or even serialized. Because just think of how much fun we are having getting into like, oh, this person's doing this different, this person's doing that different. I think you'd have to change the format a bit to your point, Cap, but I think I do think there is a lot of meat on these bones for something. It doesn't have to be Hoi 4. It doesn't even have to be the same format, but yeah, there is like there's a magic to this story in terms of the way it pulls you in. There's the alt hist angle. There's the web community angle.
To just try to replay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're succumbing to the meta art. We're succumbing to the whole point of the story. We're actually succumbing to the spirit. We're being possessed by the spirit, much like the people in the story are being possessed by the spirit from the game. All right, we're being geist by if we just had a different ending to that war, we'll finally be released.
It's water cooler optimized because there's like so many potential angles. It's one of the actually upcoming essay I have on Sanderson. It's one of the reasons I think he does so well and like Lit RPG does so well is because people like having these mechanics, right? You can kind of wrap your heads around, you can debate. In addition to like the narrative side of this one. And I think this does both of those super well because he's thought through the mechanical side. Dare I say this is a lit RPG story because there's like a lot of stats. There's there's actual stats, but there's a ton of mechanical. If you're a Hoi 4 head, there actually is an obvious like depth of knowledge. He doesn't roll in the mud with it, but he could. And actually would be super interesting.
You see it, right? And because the whole point is the release. If something happens, it's the Wojak, it's the alternate history of Wojak of desperately clinging. I need something to happen. Something must happen. Something else. By having the war end a different way. Any other fucking way. Roll the dice that was the last time when something really happened, when lives were changed, lives were born, universes were born. We all know that beautiful line from Goebbels. Right, it's a great line. He says, we will kick down the doors of the world so hard that when we slam it shut, the whole world will be stunned at our entrance. Which is basically, we're going to be so cartoonish, we're so lavish, we're going to be so ecstatic with agentic energy that
you're just using that to mean anything. Just what you like. That's your word for today. You're just.
Goebbels meant it in an agentic way.
Oh,
so that's
God.
what it was. People. The thing is, nearly 100 years later, people are still stunned at the way they shut the door on history upon themselves. They slammed the door shut.
They were stunned at their agency.
Yes, they were the last agentic group.
They slammed agentic that everyone always says.
Yes, they slammed the door at something happening ever again. So the wish fulfillment in this story is that's why I was thinking this should be like what Dave said. You had to get rid of the journalist angle, but this is like a Fear and Loathing or again a Don DeLillo novel. If you could fulfill that wish fulfillment,
he says never having read a Don DeLillo novel.
the idea of a Don DeLillo novel, right?
I've never read a Don DeLillo novel, but I'm very well versed in the idea of a Don DeLillo novel.
I read David Foster Wallace essay about being inspired by Don DeLillo. That's close enough.
Okay.
But I think he can appeal to that wish fulfillment of something different must happen. It's something must happen. It's the opposite of something will never happen. Something must happen.
You mean nothing ever happens?
Yeah, nothing ever happens. Something must happen by changing the war. If 1945 fucking something other than a tasteful sense of young man kills himself in the bunker and Stalin cucks FDR. If anything other than that, I'll be satisfied. Because for once in our lives, we achieved something that actually changed history, and history changed us. We will finally sacrifice ourselves on the altar of history. That's all men wish to die in wars. It's our version of menopause. It's men want to be part of a geist that's larger than themselves.
All right, last comments on this one. Network stage.
Masterpiece.
You got mine.
Masterpiece.
Yeah, I'd agree. Absolute 10 out of 10. Banger. And I think we're do one more pretty in depth, and then we'll probably just kind of.
I've got light coverage on one, and I want to go into, but I do want to go into the spirit of 87.
Oh yeah, me too, actually.
Okay, so spirit of 87 is from the perspective of a girl, and she's about 25 years old and is at a club, and this club is 100% 80s music. This is nostalgia for her, right? Because she was born in the year 2000. And is a proper Zoomer, a proper.
Hey, she's
Zoomer.
my birthday bestie.
Yeah, proper Zoomie. But the music that really moves her is the stuff from the 80s, and so this is a like great a great list of. This one has a good soundtrack, right? This one has a mixtape that goes with it, right? She is there with her friend with benefit, Paige, because she's a fashionable bisexual, and Paige is not. This is not Paige's scene. Paige is there.
She's a chasing Amy bisexual.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I said. A fashionable bisexual. So she's let's see. So Paige is Paige is just there for the protagonist, whose name is Rosemary, and already a name that is not super, a sort of an older name, right?
Insert Lindy Man tweet here.
And so you don't hear that very much, yeah. And they end up leaving the club, finally, like letting it play out just to the end of the evening. They close the club. And then they try to go on a bit of a walk to, sort of avoid the surge pricing on the ride share. So the modern day is cast only as an inconvenience, right? So it's just this,
and they're brokies.
Yeah, and they do not have a whole lot of money. They end up voyeuristically watching some older couples at the Bauhaus apartments, obviously again referencing a style, but also referencing an older style, which is also an 80s band. But she sees this this woman in her 40s bent over and getting fucked by another middle-aged millennial guy. And she's like, I feel a little jealous. They ended up going back, sleeping together. You find out, this is a very casual relationship. They are not dating. Rosemary lives with a millennial couple who are soy-lennials. So they have game nights. He wears, he's like I fucking love science.
Yeah, my life is like a video game guy.
Yeah. Oh God. Fucking. Oh my God.
Adventure Time on the TV.
Yeah. Watch it. They smoke weed. They have no children. They rent out their spare room to a Zoomer, and they smoke weed and watch cartoons on the TV in the living room. That's their fucking life. And so this is someone who's sort of squandered. This is a person who squandered the past that Rosemary is nostalgic for, basically. It's also a little funny because she does appreciate the vibes, but because she is adopting them, she was not born to it. She merely adopted the 80s. she doesn't entirely understand the nostalgia, or is not consistent with it, because she talks about, she dresses in a thrifted crop top and Jinkos, right? Which is anachronistic. Jinkos are a late 90s thing, not an 80s thing. Didn't exist.
Yeah, you would know, boomer.
I would know as an OG Jinkos owner. Yeah. You could hide anything in those pockets. I mean, like pockets on the back pockets on a pair of Jinko jeans, you could put a fucking laptop in that. And I mean like a late 90s laptop. You could put anything, you put a textbook in that shit, is what I'm saying. So she ends up going back to the club, and sort of towards the end of the night, Paige, says, hey, flakes on her, like right before, it's whatever. And like, she does not care. She blows it off. She's willing to break that connection, which is really her only connection to anyone who's a peer of hers. And so it's sort of towards the end of the night, Rosemary sees she sees a young guy. They sort of lock eyes, and she's referred to as the unusual boy. And he was tall and dusty blonde, not muscular or thin or fat, but perfectly standard. He wore a well-fitting collared shirt with a loosened red silk tie. In the club light, he looked straight out of the Brat Pack lineup, an Andrew McCarthy ingenue face pushing 25. He wasn't dancing. He stood still, staring at her. And so they lock eyes, and he gestures for her to follow him, and he starts going through the back rooms. Back rooms mentioned, starts going through a service entrance into an employees only area. And she's like, we can't be here. And he says, why? This is the way to get to the Chinese restaurant. And she's like, the Chinese restaurant that's been closed for years? And he's like, I guess. She sort of dodges the employees, but when the lights come on, the boy, he's gone. And so she tries to find him back. She tries to find him again. And the following week, she hides in one of the employee storage rooms behind a closet, and he comes out again. And she's piecing together that, of course, this boy is a ghost. And he died in 1987. And basically, he got hit by a car after leaving the club one night when it was a club in the 80s. So he's sort of been summoned by the literal zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. He is the zeitgeist of 1987. And so he's been summoned by this revelry, and he's drawn to her because she is sort of she's sort of like trying to inhabit that same spirit, right?
She's an avatar, basically.
Yeah.
Or a conduit.
And he goes back, they sort of, piece together each other's backgrounds. And ultimately, she ends up like being able to close her eyes and finding out that he can touch her if she's not looking, and the setting is just right. And so they end up having sex after the club is closed. And that releases him. So he was like, he was, a guy who left the club without a girl, got hit by a car, and was not going to leave, was not going to fully slough off this mortal coil until he got his Friday night fling. He got his ending.
He got that nut.
Yeah.
Dan Baltic write this one?
Dan Baltic, yeah. Nutcracker was written in 1987.
Actually, Will is Dan Baltic's grandfather.
Are you in a bathroom? What is that echo?
I'm a ghost. I'm LARPing as Will right now.
I'm a ghost. I will say...
Yeah, but Will is clearly Dan Baltic's grandfather.
I will say, and, she... there's a few lines in here where, you know, of course she's on antidepressants and she goes to therapy and shit, because she's a Zoomer female, and there are sections, you know, that I feel it really kind of has two acts, right? It has the, you know, the introduction where you get to know her. She discovers the ghost. They have their relationship, but there's no third act. I think that if this thing had a third act, maybe a conflict with the therapy, because there's sort of this half submerged conflict between, you know, her believing it's real and her believing it's not real. I mean, I think this could be an absolutely credible adaptation. You know, it's kind of an update of Ghost. I mean, to be real,
my thoughts exactly.
But less, but it's also like, it also has a really good a really good layer where you're sort of discussing, you know, modern types of alienation and finding meaning in nostalgia, which, you know, maybe the, you know, nostalgia is an unhealthy feeling, but, you know, it's possible that the past was just better. And, you know, even the slop of yesteryear is better than the top shelf today. And so,
even that ghost stick is better than
even
your lukewarm lesbian sleepover. Exactly.
Yeah. You've got someone who is barely clinging to reality being better than like what passes for a modern relationship. And you can see the sort of like dissatisfaction with, you know, with the completely cooked Zoomer situationship in several of Cairo's other stories. But I think this one might be this. I mean, this is probably my favorite story in the collection. Just because, I think the vibes are immaculate. You know, his use of the songs, his mentioning of the songs is very much in line with, you know, the what's attempting to be evoked in each scene. So he does the thing that
Forever Young,
like Forever Young, of course. He does the thing that Adam Rhinespecs did with mixtape Hyperborea. And like, I think that it could be, I think this could be an incredible adaptation, basically.
You could get the kid from Stranger Things.
I encourage it. I fucking hope not. But
that's your shtick. That's your shtick now.
Yeah, 80s movies. Yeah, Finn Wolfhard. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that this should get a screenplay.
I think it would be a great movie, but if you notice at the
it's like a classic love story, right? Mm-hmm. It's a classic love story told in a context of that's highly contemporary.
If you notice, this is a personal story. The last one, I'd say, Network Stakes, is the most important story in this collection from a Hegelian perspective. It's a Hegel story, the Network Stakes. This one's a personal interpretation. If you notice, it is a gendered thing. Network Stakes, it's about men yearning for a Männerbund. I need to die in a war. I need to sacrifice an altar. Women personify
even the woman in Network State is a man. It's that.
Exactly. There's no women other than the girl boyfriends of the frat boys on the Americans team, right? Who don't even play the game. Yep. And Rosemary, if women with period pieces, why are all women aren't into Master and Commander? If you look at period piece as a genre, you would say women in general love period pieces because they watch the most period piece content. But it's all period piece romance, right? That they're into. They're not watching Master and Commander. Right? You know what I mean? They're not watching those films, right? They're not watching HBO's Rome. They're not watching Deadwood. Watching Al Swearingen and the
Got
Titty
it.
Licker.
Al Swearingen. Man, I tried to
Yeah.
get my wife to watch Deadwood, and she was like, "I can't handle the dialogue."
Gross.
And I was
Exactly.
Gross.
and I was
Yeah.
like, "You watch the Gilmore Girls. It's not like the quick talking is any more pronounced in Deadwood, but
It's not the period. If Seth Bullock was like much more suave or sexy, if it was played by Finn Wolfhard, but in reality, I was very angry when I first read the story. I wanted to punch it because I when I got to read the frat boy, I already didn't like frat boy FDR, so I went to go take a piss. I came back and sat down. I thought the network stage was going to be the holy hunt of this collection. I thought it was going to be the long story. And of course, immediately ends after the frat boy. I'm like, I want to know how this ends, right? So I'm angry when I first see this piece, and I ended up loving this piece. I thought, it's a one-note rom-com story when I first read it, but then I reread it a second time and third time, and I really kind of fell in love with it. And again, Cairo is very comfortable writing from a female POV, if you notice this, especially in another story, The Branches. But he's very comfortable writing it from both genders' POVs, and it tends to cover the book. Rosemary is very much, she's what I see this girl all the time as the TikToker of the three of us. You see many of these girls with aesthetic accounts. You got the British girl who loves Led Zeppelin. She wears the bell bottoms, Stevie Nicks beret, that kind of thing. Whose entire internet persona or online persona is dedicated to a genre of music, a decade of music, and the men of that decade. Right, and the eras are personified in men, right? Eddie Van Halen or Stevie Nicks, if you're into the tasteful bisexual thing, and she's fucked straight basically. These again, like Good Will Hunting, the other story, the other Ben Affleck story. What's it called?
Said
Chasing Amy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chasing Amy. Kevin Smith's last great movie, other than Mallrats.
Chasing Amy was after Mallrats.
Yeah, I was saying his best movie other than Mallrats. Oh. And so, if you notice, an interesting thing in this story is that she gets to move on. Will does not. Will dies. It's a Black Widow story. It's a gender bent version.
She does murder fuck him.
Yeah,
yep.
She exercises him via the power of her lips. Right.
Yep.
He in his climax he dies. In a lot of ways it's a gender version of John Keats's La Belle dans sa Merci or Ode to Melancholy. If in those poems, John Keats notoriously portrays a man as soon as he falls in love with the manic pixie dream girl. Literally, I met a lady in the meads fair, and her eyes were wild. The beautiful La Belle dans sa Merci poem, one of the best poems of all time. He is left drained. He sees the ghost of her body count, and he's left haunted on the cold hillside. That's literally the poem. Mm-hmm. It's a great poem. It's one of my favorite poems of all time.
I like the way you said it. Yeah.
And he's literally drained. And notice men get drained from their love when they meet their manic pixie dream girls. Once they meet their dream GFs, their alpha fuck, they don't get to move on. Men are drained permanently. Well, women, they get to move on. They get to get to an equilibrium state. Yeah, it's not as I don't get to be with Chad, but Beta is stable, right? And it's the same thing. It's Titanic all over again.
I'm not sure if I follow your train of thought. Men get drained.
Yeah, men get drained. Men get killed once they meet their dream girl. Like if Rosemary was a dude, if it was a Gabe, if it was Zoomer instead of like the 80s, it's like Smashing Pumpkins. Tonight's playing. All you have is a silhouette of the girl. You have the eye. You can't see. You're blindfolded, and it's like tonight to believe in me as I believe.
Please don't
in
sing.
you. Right. You can feel it. Imagine as a dude, as a Zoomer, you can feel the silhouette of the girl. She kisses you. She's the agentic party. She kisses you, and she fades away. And you never get the most peak bliss, your ultimate fantasy just fades away into the ether. You're supposed to walk away from that. A man would put his head into concrete and wait for a car to run over his head. A man does not walk away from that. A woman can get to equilibrium state. A woman can get away from Prince Charming and find a beta to tie the knot to and live kind of... Again, it's the Rose thing from Titanic all over again, right?
That fucking bitch.
Yeah. And she gets to move on, has 4 grandchildren, and her most meaningful moment in her last dying wish is for her ghost to go with the homeless Leonardo DiCaprio she fucked a long time ago.
Yep.
You see what I'm getting at, right? A gender-bent version of a John Keats poem, which is a tragedy for all men. As soon as they meet their pixie dream girl, it's the end for them. Love, Bell, Some Mercy, Ode to Melancholy. The gender-bent version of these poems, you could write a very good Camille Paglia-esque essay comparing John Keats' poems to this story. She gets to move on. Yeah, she's a little shaken by it, but she's not. There's no melancholy. She's not really particularly saddened after. She describes the stillness of the air after he
I think there is melancholy, but it's also I think there is melancholy.
But it's brushed aside. It's like, oh yeah, the therapist said it's just a figment of imagination. She moves on from it. The last lines of the story is like, yeah, it's a talking point I have with my therapist, but she doesn't experience a drastic life change from that story. She holds it on as a memory, but she doesn't fundamentally change her outlook to a certain degree. She gets the fulfillment of her fetish. She gets a fulfillment of her, Jungian archetype ideal of the 80s, personified as Will, but she doesn't go to a character change for good or for ill. You know what I mean? Because she's willing to talk about it with a therapist.
Yeah, and I mean,
right?
I think, and that's why I'm saying, needs a third act.
It does need the evaporation as they listen to the Bowie. I think they make out into the Bowie song. I don't think he inserts. And again, this is you being a horn dog. I don't think he actually inserts the phantasmic pelvis into her.
It's necessary for the fantasy, Gabe. You've been over this.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Cap's horny story. This is his horny.
No, not really. I think it's actually just kind of sweet.
This is your hunters.
No, I really do think it's just kind of sweet.
It's a very sweet story. Forever, it's straight up cheesy. It borderlines into cheesy, but it's very sincere cheesiness, and Cairo makes it work.
For me,
right?
I've been a little quiet because I don't know. This one just was the one that fell flat for me. I think all of them in the story. This is the only one where I just got it right away.
This is like a John Hughes. No, I mean I got it too, but it's like a John Hughes movie for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, comfortable.
It's peak Hughes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like especially. Especially that moment when they're slow dancing to Forever Young, and he's like, we really were scared about the bombs dropping. Like that's a perfect movie line when he talks about it. We were scared of the bombs.
Yeah, I think it could work in a movie. I just found in like the written form, I don't know, like just throwing in a song and then like the song is the tone and then the ghost is like a literal representation of the time. It was just like, I don't know, this one was just a little too simple and a little too like clear from the jump. Not terrible. This one I think was my meh of the book. I think everything else I thought was good.
So it relies too much on vibes. That's the problem with Vibe's story. Like yet again, like it's the band situation with Shaduk, right? If you're not into it, it drags on like an anime arc. It's just, if you don't have a similar taste to Adam's music.
If you don't get the ref, then it's right.
I think so with Adams, even whether or not I got the song reference, I thought it worked. In this one, it was, I don't know, it was just a little too, I guess I haven't thought through it clear enough on this one. It was just a little too like, I guess it's just the 80s and it's about the 80s. And so all the songs are the 80s. So whereas
I don't know if it's necessarily about the 80s as much as it's sort of about
the
things
best,
that are
glorifying the past.
It's about things that are about the 80s. But it's more generally about nostalgia.
No, I agree, but the context. So why I guess I just want to flesh, like I'm thinking through this myself live now with Mixtape Hyperborea. Those songs are songs that we lived through the rise of them. We have so much context of those, whereas I think anyone that's going to read this, their context of these songs will be of the songs themselves, right? The representation of the song of, insert any 80s song is how the song sounds, how the song feels, the vibe of the song. Whereas Eminem, you're talking about like this Eminem song or Good Morning Captain or whatever from Mixtape Hyperborea, there is, because we were actually alive during it, there's like a more of a time and a place and a context and like social class awareness.
Well, alive and
clique
not
awareness.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, not 4 years old, exactly.
Yeah.
That makes it very different in a way that for me makes it work more as references for how often music is referenced in this. I think this is like, what is this, like 2 dozen words in the whole story. It's not a big deal, but I just find it interesting as an aspect of why that worked for me. Whereas in this one, the song names are that you recognize the song name, and that's the depth of the musical callback.
No, I don't think so. No, it's not just like, lol, remember this. It's that the song, like the tone of the song.
Yeah.
Is,
the sound of the song.
Well, not the topic and lyrics of the song match the scene in which it is taking place.
Yeah.
And also, you can also do the meta thing where, she has a very shallow understanding of the 80s because it's a TikTok aesthetic account basically come to life.
That is true.
But she gets to meet a real deal physical representation. Of course, the first thing he mentions, I'm just like Buck Rogers, which is a 1950s pulp character. So even he's referring to something past.
Yeah, he's well, 60s a lot. Buck Rogers is older than that. Yeah, you're right.
It's something his dad would have given.
He is also referencing, and to be clear, Will is a literal boomer.
Yeah, he's 60 something.
He is a
There's
literal
age
boomer.
gap.
Yeah,
she could still get it. She said her boss is the same age. I mean, just saying, sweetie, we're still out here.
He would have gone counsel like Cormac McCarthy, like if he. And there's this great moment. There's a great moment where he realizes he can't even take his damn drink. Because Will is actually a character. He's not just a boy toy. You feel sorry for Will. It's like, I can't even drink my damn drink. All my family's most likely dead. My dad is dead. Like he realizes. And what Will is a representation of the whole book, the whole meme of the book, which is the Zoomer generation stuck in a, I don't want to say stunted growth, but more like gelatic growth or embryo. The weird gel that's not the embryo itself, but the weird like slime gel around an embryo.
You think Will represents Zoomerhood?
The amniotic sac, the amniotic fluid?
Yes, Zoomers are permanently stuck in an adolescent embryonic sac, right? And Will is like the representation of that. It's not temporal; it's spatial.
I don't know if
it's a vibe thing.
Agree with that, because he can't be both the symbol of the glorified past and of the Zoomer trapped in his zoominess. Like at the same time, I think those two ideas are in conflict.
You can walk and chew gum. I think for her, it's a representation of her ideal. But the personal arc and the meta arc of the book, the story, it's temporal, but the meta arc of this short story collection is the Zoomerness, because she is a Zoomer. She's I think most likely my age, right? So yes, temporal. She gets to have her fetish fantasy realized in a concrete, realistic way, while we as the readers get another twist of the knife in terms of the meta arc of the Zoomer's character growth, even though she doesn't necessarily get that message. It's inner story and outer story. Mm-hmm. So overall, I think this is actually oddly enough, despite it being a simple like love story in a lot of ways. I think, especially when read with network states, oddly enough, it actually pairs really well. It's actually a really good gender bent John Keats poem. I actually really did appreciate this novel.
So you had some. Did either of you guys? So the next story in the collection is called Locked In, and it's
the
basically.
Story, yeah.
No.
The Cole story.
No. The one you didn't like this one. You didn't like this one because it reflects poorly on you. But
this is the war one.
This is the one that is. He said Cole, not cult. But this is based on, or this is a story of 3 soldiers who are fighting a war against communist separatists in the state of Oregon. And they're American loyalists. There is our protagonist, who is kind of like a guy who's just trying to live through being in a war, and kind of liking it, but also being terrified. There's Jensen, who is Gabe. And
he's not. He's not. He's vulgar Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe. So there's Jensen, who's Gabe, and then there's Captain Schriefer, who is a
Homelander.
boomer. Yeah. Also referred to as Homelander, who is a boomer.
And then protagonist's name is Jim Duwag.
Yep, Duwag. Yeah, that's right. And essentially it goes through them killing a bunch of communist rocket teams who are sort of guarding Highway 80, I think. And
I-84.
I-84 and running away.
Fake Cairo Smith fan alert right there.
And running away from drone pilots. So it's sort of the trying to get into the head. Primarily, obviously there's this story happening around it, but I think probably what prompted this is sort of all of the Ukraine war footage, sort of prompting what is it like to be the guy who, anyone who's on the internet as much as we are, has seen dozens of Russians and Ukrainians die. Like, just from the perspective of the grenade that is flying at them, right? No shortage of that. And that's, that maybe the experience of just everyone being able to voyeuristically see your chest get turned into pulp with a bunch of shrapnel and drone parts. Maybe that's a different story, but this is sort of trying to get into the experience of the guy who's getting fragged. And they're
it actually was originated that way, by the way. In the guide, he says it was actually set in Ukraine to begin with, and then he switched it between drafts to become a U.S. setting.
Yeah, that one scene is directly
Ukraine.
There's that one scene that's directly from the live leak where one of the commies, if you remember that one scene, the Ukrainians literally take an iPhone from the Russian's pocket and FaceTime his mother. That's actually a direct scene.
That happened, yeah. Which fucked up, but yeah, that happened. I have... there's a lot of things about the characterization of Jensen is pretty funny. He has basically no ideology. His ideology is like I hate libs, and he is
who's that fucking guy on Twitter, Goblin Man or whatever, the guy that screams in his bathroom.
Oh, Orc Brand.
Or he's an Orc Brand. He's an Orc Brand alignment.
Yeah. Chaotic Chud. And it's the characterization is pretty funny. The story overall is pretty fucking bleak. Unfortunately, I think, and you got a short story about a long campaign, and it's let's just say you don't see the end of the campaign. So,
well, he gets Sissy Hypno to death actually at the end of it.
That was my only complaint about this one. I actually really like this one in terms of
I thought it was quite good. Yeah, the quick shift from Ernst Younger War is Awesome to basically getting to choose between burning to death, getting mangled by a drone, or the quote unquote easy way. That was very stark. Things go south super quick.
That was my only complaint, was the sci-fi element of there's like a screen. If you give yourself a blue screen of death on your phone and you look at it, you die.
Yeah, there's basically,
it's kind of introduced like midway through or later, and then it's just like it's like you say, okay, I'm just gonna zap myself. That was the only part that I think could be like teased out or in a revision.
It was actually kind of. I thought that was really cool because it ends up being a countermeasure against the drone pilot, because okay, so the way that this works is it's a mimetic kill agent, right? So it's a video that if you watch it makes you have a seizure and fucking die. And so he kills the drone pilot he kills the drone pilot by playing the video on his phone as the drone is nearing him. And so the pilot watches it, spurgs out, the drone, flies off into the woods and just crashes. But he ultimately, it actually he is not in danger of a drone at the end of it. But in order to have escaped that prior drone, he had sort of jumped off an embankment and broken his leg. And so he's there crippled, and a airstrike comes through because the U.S. Army is advancing, and the communists are basically burning everything that they can't have. They're sort of doing a Sherman's retreat, and so the woods around him, because he's in the hills in Oregon, so it's all pine, so he's about to get burned real fast.
Yeah.
And so he just turns the kill agent on himself, and he dies in bliss. And
the kill agent idea, I want to be clear, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying its introduction, the way it's brought up, the way it's introduced. Yeah, I think that was a little bit the only rougher part, and what otherwise I think is a really great story.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that they just randomly find it on somebody's phone, and then immediately recognize what it is before killing themselves with it.
Well, the super online Jensen recognizes it, which a character like Jensen would know what it is immediately by the name thing, because he's the one who brought it up.
Yeah. Minor point.
Yeah. But I do like that, because there's some discussion about the psychology of, is the drone operator, a coward because they're, hunting from basically an unassailable position, and what they're going to do to the drone pilots when they get to them, right? They're going to have
they fantasize about how they'll kill the drone pilots.
Yeah, about how they'll how they'll exact their vengeance. And the but the mimetic kill agent is what gets to is what allows him to strike back at the drone pilot, because otherwise he would have no ability to do so.
Yeah, that's a cool twist, and makes you think about just the screen. The screen is the weapon. If you're seeing it, you are kind of pulled into it, right? Like even us as someone. So what inspired the story is seeing some of these horrific things. You see it on the screen and inflicts the violence upon you.
Right.
So it's a cool. I like that tie-in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My main beef, as y'all know, which Cap falsely, is that what is Jensen supposed to be? Are we supposed to what network state worked? This fails him. He tries to capture the internet culture, the e-right, internet politics, the spirit of the internet, the voice of the internet. And that's with Jensen, right? He's the kind of guy who watches the Jonathan Bowden TikTok accounts and the Hyperborea edits, right? That's the whole point. He even says he's been freebasing. I think he uses neotrad content since he's 12 or something like that. He mentions that to Jensen.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Jim does not sound like the kind of guy to know what neotrad is. He uses Charlie because his dad was a Vietnam vet. He's a redneck guy from Texas who is a penal loan. He's a prisoner soldier. He's a jail soldier, basically.
Yeah, he manslaughtered a guy, and then got assigned to a penal legion. Which
but
bring back penal legions, by the way. Bring back penal legions.
No, do you want all of Compton to fight for you?
What?
You want all of Compton you trust all of Compton with AK-47s?
It literally depends on what we're doing with them, but bring back penal legions.
Tasteful penal legions. But if my problem with this is that Jensen is an insincere caricature of an e-right young man.
You felt seen. I think,
you
Gabe.
felt seen.
No, because the thing is, he doesn't have a strict ideology. Again, the whole joke is that he's quote unquote. No, he doesn't read theory. Jensen, he says inshallah, even though he's not Christian, or he every time he asks a question,
he's joking around, Dave.
Oh my God, no one has ever told on themselves. so hard.
No,
He says
Jensen's
inshallah even though he's not Christian. Gabe,
Do I say
come on.
inshallah?
This is
Even in our private dealings, I never say inshallah. You can check the Discord.
Okay. All right. You know,
Jensen. But the problem with Jensen is: are we supposed to fear him? Are we supposed to? Is this the Mother Jones?
I think we're
article,
supposed to pity Jensen, actually.
Right, because he's a hypocrite. Because the whole point is like, oh, suicide is because he names a
He says,
Homelander.
he says suicide is a sin.
And then he pops himself in the head. So it's like it's the big bad, neo-fash. Turns out he's just a wimp. You get it's the classic. It's the inverse of Umberto Eco's fascism essay, right? He's not a white man with fangs. He's a pale boy with gums, and that's the problem with Jensen is that he's a shallow caricature. It has this sketch of a guy because it's an interesting story. If you want to go, we gotta be a little evil. You want to have fear. You want to show the dangers of online radicalization, like an online radical. Show his fangs a little bit, like the dangers of freebasing radical ideology since you're 12 years old. That's an interesting story, especially in like a neo-Civil War, like those guys, the Zoomer Freikorps. That would be super interesting to see what a Zoomer Freikorps would look like. Right,
God, don't tempt me.
It'll be great, right? It'll be interesting, but it's just we don't. The problem is, Homelander doesn't have an ideology. The main protagonist is just some dude from Texas. We don't have a good sketch. The world building. The problem is he actually a radical, or is he just is he radical for his time, or no? Because we don't know much about the neo-Civil War. The government still exists. There's a neutral party or a neutral government. It seems to be the feds seem not to be interested in this, or it seems to be only a states issue between. Idaho gets a lot of love in this story, by the way. This is the second Idaho story. Idaho mentioned in this collection.
Idaho mentioned
twice.
Yeah.
If I had a quarter for each time Idaho was mentioned in this collection, I'd have 50 cents. It's just a big deal because Idaho's never mentioned any other stories.
Yeah, right.
But the problem, Homelander, he's known as Homelander because Jensen, who's a TikTok Zoomer, names him Homelander. Homelander actually sees Charlie, the enemies. Our main protagonist calls them Charlies, like an old school boomer 60s Vietnam veteran. The main protagonist. He had an ex-girlfriend who was in Austin who broke up with him because she went full lib, apparently. It's very vaguely hinted that basically what happened is she went woke, basically, and dumped him. He's a normie Republican. Homelander actually... It's referenced that Homelander actually thinks if circumstances were different, he would be friends with the enemy. Which is very bizarre because we don't know are these Portland communists? Is this Catgirl Lenin? Because again, we get a good look at what leftists are like in network states very clearly. It's actually straight out of Reddit, straight out of the internet discourse. While in this universe of this story, it's very vague. It's too vague. So we can't judge Jensen because again, this is a Civil War America. Ideology is going to be radical. Is he actually radical, or is he just a normal Zoomer who's following the ideology of his time? We don't know what Jensen's like. We don't have a barometer to judge whether or not Jensen is radical. And we don't know if he's supposed to be like Kurtz, like, instead of the heart of Africa, it's the heart of E-right politics that he's been radicalized. And, it's hard to judge Jensen because 1 minute he's dangerous, he's a psychopath. He's FaceTiming Charlie's own mother to tell him, we're going to kill your son, ma'am, and the next minute he's a coward. He's obviously supposed to be like a Voss character, like a Far Cry 3 villain, basically, for all intents and purposes. But he's both having that intimidating gravitas, where he loves war, and also being a coward who shoots himself in the head, even though despite saying suicide is a sin 3 minutes before. Yeah. The problem is the inconsistent ruler of judgment. We don't have a good ruler to actually judge Jensen.
Yeah, I think this is a setting thing. Well, because it's a short story and because it's not in a real conflict, you don't have that awareness. And then, so if it's in a short story, I don't think there's a way you can get around this, right? Because it's got to be a war story to be about drones. That's the heart of the story, is the panic of a soldier that is in like a drone combat situation trying to capture this Ukraine conflict. But I guess I see Jensen and all of them just being more general ciphers for soldiers, right? Soldiers in this kind of, I'm sorry, I just tripped on something. Ciphers in this kind of position. So I don't know if there's a way. I think maybe the smarter move would be to put it in a real conflict or something maybe that would have headed this off, because I think it could just get really bogged down, if we're going through the whole history of it any more than he does. I guess I didn't see Jensen as that much of a caricature. I guess he is like he's a radicalized member of a militant unit. You know what I mean? Like he's someone that's, but I didn't see him as like trying to represent me or. I think he's Gabe.
I think he's Gabe.
Yeah, I think it's a Gabe.
No, he's not. You're bringing it's not personal for me. I just generally do not think he was a good caricature because Cairo's very good with Twitter anons. He does this later on in the Branches story. He's very good with the gaming community. He does very good in network states. It's just here, he misses. It's not a true, authentic voice of the internet. I don't see my fellow Chud in Jensen. I see a caricature of my fellow Chud. This is the Mother Jones article. This is early alt-right. Oh, alt-right Zoomers are getting radicalized online. I can see Cairo's not finger wagging, but this is a caricature that the finger wagging normies of the early days. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I like the idea. I don't even mind. I don't mind him being the villain. I don't even mind the idea at all. But I just think, is he Zoomer Judge Holden? Is he Zoomer
Judge Holden? Oh God!
All right, I do want to be time We've done our deep dives,
so we all agree that Locked In was cool. We all
no, Locked In was very good. Spirit of A7 was cool.
I liked Locked In.
I
don't think any of these are cool.
Yeah, you just see yourself in Homelander.
I was just pulling a Gabe.
Yeah.
Spirit of A7 is the only mid one. The rest I really like. Well, Hunters and Network State, I'm going to announce it now formally. Required reading.
Yeah.
You got to read the Nut Cell Duology. You got to read Hunters and Network State. It just is what it is.
Yeah, both of them at least twice. Both of them are actually very much enriched.
Hunters is fantastic. For sure.
And then after this is the creepypasta story, right?
We're not going to go blow by blow through these ones. But would you actually not? Let me give the million mile view. Or Cap, you want to give a million mile view of one or two of them here?
Okay. I'll give the million mile view. So from the branch, another love story. Essentially, two characters who are both broken in their own way. One guy is a Nietzschean bodybuilder, and one chick is Honor Levy. And
alt title for this, by the way,
yeah,
The Raped. They're just two people that went to public school.
Amazing. And so they were essentially they're two maladjusted people who run into each other by crazy random happenstance, and discover that they were both part of a program that was sort of like basically a gifted program that was also also involved sexual abuse and weird they got MK Ultra essentially, and the end of the story is them having this somewhat, so they have this sort of standoffish flirting session. He drops a word that he would only know if he was in this program, Mind Tree. That's what it was called. She picks up on it, and then they realize this shared connection, and talk about what the possible outcomes could be. One is they get caught making a bomb to blow up Mind Tree. Another is they succeed and live in hiding in Hungary or wherever. And then the other
Czech
is
Republic, actually.
Yeah, well, they're all the same. And then the last is that they just ignore it and move on and have a life together.
They have a hecking normal one.
They have a hecking normal one, and they choose to have a hecking normal one.
The net happiness of the world increased.
Yeah. And she's and these are all, she's on like, she uses like pro Anna language, like 1200 is enough, etc.
And she's a rad femme Hitler, basically. Like literally one of her. She says, "Well, my mother had me when she was 40, so my spirit had time to digest." That's literally the rad femme Hitler tweet.
And so they have, and this is sort of about the maladjustment, the inability of Zoomers to communicate with each other, male and female, and the only thing that can join these two people is shared trauma. rather than anything, and the note of hope, right, is that they find a way to make something positive out of it. But that is the thing, right? Like the shared trauma is the thing that causes them to open up to each other.
Well, Martin literally says this to Spurgler Acolyte stand-in, who's basically he literally mentioned Spengler. I imagine Spurgler Acolyte as him. So Martin literally says, suffering is, he does the Nietzsche quote about suffering is the true meaning. And she says, oh, so edgy. And he's like, see, exactly. You can't take sincerity. The banter they have between each other is very well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the dialogue in this one is probably the strongest. Out of all of them,
Zach Dennison's Ghost, which is one of my favorites too.
It's a creepypasta story. It's a solid
creepypasta.
Yeah, we can do that one, and I do have some notes on that as well. Just about the overall.
Yeah, I mean, people want to read it. They can read it. I do recommend it, but basically, it's about a guy who knows someone who's a filmmaker.
The frame on this one is weird.
The
frame on this one is really weird.
How so? Because you feel like it should be direct.
It's just because it's so it sort of does the whole. It seems like a setup, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's going to go investigate what happens to his friend, but he does. It's sort of like the Lovecraft stories. Like, I received a letter from Dracula, I guess. Yeah. Or Nosferatu. And I received a letter from my friend and so on and so forth. But he just sort of is like, oh yeah, my friend went fucking crazy. It's like,
he was talking to a Japanese ghost or an American pilot. They got tortured by Japanese people, but actually it was a Japanese demon. Spoiler.
It's a neo-epistolary story, and it's by kanji.
Based. Good one.
So it does. So yeah, essentially the story is his friend is a filmmaker. He.
I just said it. I just said the story.
No. Hold on. He moves heaven and earth to try to get a film made because he's convinced that it will release this American pilot's spirit from being trapped on the earth. And the story of the American pilot is that they went down over Japan during World War II. They were tortured to death because bomber pilots were not very well liked at the time. But he discovers going to Japan and finding, no end of misfortune on the set, that in fact, the spirit was not of a trapped American pilot. It was actually a Japanese yokai that has tricked him into sort of reenacting this thing, and if he doesn't escape, he's going to be trapped to do the yokai's bidding. And he does not help his friend escape. And then the next thing he hears about his friend is that the movie about the pilot is scrapped, basically because of stuff that he says to the investors about his friend's mental state. And then the next thing he hears is that his friend has sort of like resurfaced and is going to be doing a different film. And so he's like, oh, well, it's very good that he'll be doing this film. And it's called Cement Barrel Girl, which is I think that's the exact name of it. Sorry, hold on.
Girl the Barrel, I think. I thought it was Girl
Concrete Barrel Girl. That's what it is.
Concrete Barrel Girl.
And that is that is a real movie that I want to briefly describe. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but basically
a real event.
Yeah, there is a movie made out of it with that title.
Oh damn. Okay.
And I mean the movie was released in 2004. So in English it's called Concrete. Concreto. But it's the murder of Junko Furuta, which basically Japanese high school girl in the 70s, or no, not the 70s, in the 80s, got kidnapped by 4 delinquents and tortured and raped for days, weeks, long period of time before she eventually got essentially starved and beaten to death. And they hid her in a basically a concrete barrel on a job site, and then eventually were arrested, tried, convicted. The longest term any of them served was 20 years. Did not get death. Did not get the death penalty. This is not Japan being soft. They were all minors, but the least time any of them served was 7 years. They were all convicted, all appealed their convictions, and then and this doesn't happen in the U.S., but it is fucking hilarious that it happens in Japan. Not only lost their appeals, but had their sentences increased. They had their sentences increased by 50% when they lost their appeals.
Based Japan?
Based, yeah.
It really is the white man's Wakanda.
And yeah, so eventually, but yeah, this is like a well-known murder in Japan. This is like the Jean-Benet Ramsey times 20.
Yeah, it's Reddit's favorite murder. Every time you bring up how nice Japan's trains are, it's like, you say Japan's so clean, but what about
there was a
this?
murder in the 80s? Yeah. So it also does kind of, because I'm sure that there's no shortage of heinous murders like this in the United States.
It is a waste of a wolf cut. I really did like the girl's hair. She was really cute.
Oh my god. Okay. So
after the anything else now? Let's
no. That's it. I like this is a great ghost story. I like the treatment. I like the the reference to the real world events. It's a good tight little horror story.
I do have a critique.
Yeah.
Well, one of the great pros was when he finally confronts the film director bro in that house and it's raining.
Yeah.
It's a great little pros about the rain. But we won't get into detail about that. What do you say to journalist crutch? Because he does the journalist POV frame. This isn't really the journalist POV. I think that the POV could have been done better in this story. I mean, I think this is probably the weakest story, but it's a creepypasta basically for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I mean, the POV, there is something.
The POV is wonky.
Would the POV be stronger if it was from the director's POV? If we actually got to see him suffering through all this, or no?
Sort of, or if it was like
him.
There are multiple ways they could have done it, but yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think the POV is the weakest aspect of this. I think just the perspective that it's being.
Yeah, the actual plot beats and descriptions are all work.
Yeah,
because it kind of falls into Jackalopian syndrome, where
it's almost like they could have. It's almost like Cairo could have framed this as like a wiki entry, and it would have worked better.
Yeah, it would have. That's why I called it a creepypasta. It's better as a creepypasta because in a collection like this, as the narrator, as the POV, our main protagonist, he doesn't go on a journey. His whole point is to be a punchline. He's like, oh, well, how sweet. He gets to, at least he got to make another movie, and he looks to the screen. Concrete girl in a barrel. He's doing a Norm Macdonald bit to the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The narrator's whole point is to be a punchline, to deliver the dark punchline of he's going to tell a story. He's going to manifest a girl getting raped and thrown into a concrete barrel. So
I would agree actually though, because you made a reference of maybe being a crutch, the reporter POV, because Network States has it, this has it, and Portrait of Camille Oaken all have it, and I would say all three of them it works. Like Network State, like I said, I think it's a banger, but all three of these reporters are pretty generic, flavorless POVs to view through. Like there's no. Like, I don't know. They didn't have there's no description. There's no phraseology. It's like, oh, this guy is like this kind of guy. They're just sort of direct, just the facts for the most part. Obviously, the guy in Portrait of Camille, Oaken, which I guess, just to summarize, a guy goes, reporter dude goes out to do a photo shoot with an e-girl. I'm sure you were drooling at this one, Gabe.
No, she's she's like 30 something.
She's over the hill.
Close. She hit the wall.
Post wall. And just, is inspired by, she does a photo shoot. He cries like a bitch when he's like, show me your true self and all that. And he has a come to Jesus moment. I'm being glib.
True self is
I like,
a bitch.
yeah, I'm being glib. I actually like this story, but it's all it's from the POV of a reporter, but there's a reporter editing the work of this reporter, so it's a double. This reporter.
There's a bitchy
inception.
editor. Yeah, there's a bitchy editor who's like doing inline notes.
Yeah, which I liked. As a good touch.
Yeah.
But the direct POV was pretty. I thought was a little plain on this thread.
Yeah.
Well, Camille is the second worst story in this collection. Which most of these stories are at least solid, if not great. But Camille is also you got mail tier rom-com early 2000s story basically.
I think I think it's cute. It's got like
it's very short too.
Yeah, it's got like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind sort of vibes. That's very like hipster romance sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's other contrast from Millennium. Millennium, the first story, last story, perfect, very strong stories. In here, very strong start off, very weak end off, because Camille is the last story.
Yeah.
I would say From the Branches might have been a better last story, actually.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues is that you have to split up you gotta stretch out the journalist stories, right?
Yeah.
It's a journalist being your POV is always
suspect.
Well, no, it's just really easy, right? Because there's always a reason for them to, it's like, oh, well, why is this person here? Oh, because it's their job.
It's like making your story your main character in your horror game a detective.
Yeah, it's like yeah, exactly. I guess
the end of Camille. What? Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I'm trying to remember how it ends. Like I think he's just
it ends with it. Yeah. So this Gonzo piece, about this portrait artist who he has fallen in love with because of her, or essentially her method. Her method makes him fall in love with her, and he based this Gonzo journalism piece turns into a resignation letter at the end.
Yeah,
and
very Vincenzo Barney.
Very Vincenzo Barney. Shout out Vincenzo Barney. I'm so glad you bagged and managed to become Cormac McCarthy's Eskimo brother. Do you have any more notes on this, or we could knock out Lizard Man real quick?
Yeah, hit Lizard Man. Not last but not least.
I would real quick. Does it as a Straussian little note? I think it's hinted that the journalist in Camille is Cairo self-insert to a certain degree. Because what does the editor criticize on the journalist? By the way,
help me out.
He repeats the same phrase twice. Remember, in Hunters, the main protagonist says, I need Atlas, or something along those lines. At page number 9. He repeats the same word twice. The editor complains that the journalist uses the same phrase twice to accentuate the point. He's like, listen, you're not Gertrude Stein, all right? You're not, drop that act. And, of course, there's another thing where he describes the camera. If you notice, the main protagonist of Hunters describes, I read out the line about how there's a metaphysical bliss, there's a metaphysical sincerity in a camera. And the whole crutch of Portrait of Camille is that, he feels one with the universe, basically, when she's behind the camera. She's the eye of God. There's no difference between her and the lens. They fuse into one. He's the Hegelian subject of history. He is everything. He is part of the universe. Which is another symmetry. That one line in Hunters gets expanded to a whole plot point in Camille. So there is symmetries between the first story and the last story. And it's very uneven.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that up. And,
that makes sense.
There's some
So the editor,
self-insertion.
the editor themselves, not the journalist, but the editor is Cairo.
No, the journalist is Cairo. Because the journalist is the one who wants to do
the editor is him criticizing himself.
Yeah, because he's also an editor in Futurist Letters. So it's a meta commentary.
Well, obviously obviously he wrote all of it, so it's all Cairo. But
right.
losing my mind.
But Cairo likes to do the repeating the one phrase because he does it in Hunters, and the editor in that story criticizes the journalist.
Right. Yes, I heard what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that one little neat thing about Camille. I just still think it was too early 2000s rom-com. You Got Mail-esque.
It's cute. No, I mean, You Got Mail is also a remake. So it's
really
yeah. Shop Around the Corner, much older movie.
Yeah, you are. I forgot how old you are.
Yeah, well, Shop Around the Corner was 40 years before I was born. So
still old as shit.
So the last one. The last story the last story we haven't covered, and the penultimate story in the collection, Lizard Man, is like a very Asian style horror story, where a biotech worker accidentally gets shot with a basically a lizard gene editing ray, loses his idol girlfriend, and hand idol. Yeah. Well, look, man. She's modeling in Shinjuku, so who knows? And and slowly starts becoming, he jokes, he'll become a superhero, but instead he starts, becoming a fucking, monitor lizard.
Fucking lizard.
He starts becoming a monitor lizard of some kind, right? So he's unable to stand up comfortably. He wants to crawl on his belly. He starts getting covered in scales. He becomes, cold-blooded, and therefore,
to change his environment.
Yeah, his environment has to change.
He's scared to complain about it, right? He wants to be the jokey guy through the whole thing. It's metamorphosis. They even bring up, he's like, oh, here's the book Metamorphosis.
Yeah, it's a donkey kick to the teeth, because he literally, when the last words he says, I'm in a much better situation than Gregor Samsa. So we'll talk about that later. But also, just give the hand model some credit. She was willing to fuck him when he was turning to lizard, at least initially.
Yeah, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it because he, lizard dick. He disgusted himself. Actually, there's no indication that he had a lizard dick. Although,
if he learned a lesson from Hunters, if he leaned into the monster thing, she might have been turned on.
Well, but here,
she was shit testing him.
Here's the thing. So, so he loses his job. He has to relocate, and ultimately, the company that he works for, actually does him a solid, because they set him up with a herpetological researcher, because they can't figure out how to reverse his symptoms or his transformation, and she's fucking into it in the weirdest sort of the very Japanese way, where it kind of works out. And at the end, she has set him up with basically a giant terrarium. She remodels a basement apartment with heat lamps and places for him to bask, and she sort of is trying to help him. And and she, it's super hot in there because he's cold-blooded.
You just know.
And she disrobes and is sweating and wearing a red bikini. And she's just like, I'm here for you. I have to know everything about you. And it's horny in the Takashi Miike way. Like, if you've ever seen any of Takashi Miike's films, Ichi the Killer or Audition, or 13 Assassins, even, which is not a particularly horny movie, but it's also like there's always a horny aspect to it. That is that's sort of the way that it's expressed in the Japanese idiom.
She's a state mandated nurse, mommy GF.
Corporation mandated. Like he's given by the company. And so, and I mean, there's even a point at which he contemplates suicide, but he doesn't do it because he has an appointment the following day, and he would hate to be a bother. Like it's hilarious. It's like a funny. It's like a dramatic comedy sort of retelling of Metamorphosis. And I think I must have mentioned this at some point, but Philip Roth also has a short story. It's actually novella length of his version of the Metamorphosis called The Breast, where a guy turns into a giant tit, and he's a real asshole about it. And it's horny in not the Japanese way, but in the Philip Roth way, which is extremely horny and very vulgar. But
in a very Zionist way.
That also directly references the Metamorphosis. Every time anyone does the frame story of you start transforming into another thing, they will always mention Franz Kafka. Like it's basically a requirement. They have to say, yes, I know, you know, like we're still doing it. Right? That's what you're saying. You're saying, I know it's the Metamorphosis. You know it's the Metamorphosis. We're going to get it out of the way by acknowledging it explicitly within the narrative. And then we're going to move on. Because
for once, I wish it was Ovid's Metamorphosis. Because even Slop King himself, Brandon Sanderson.
I wish it was Shindo L's Metamorphosis. The real ones will know. Don't worry about it.
Probably another boomer thing.
Oh, no, it's not. But
it's a Kafka story of a happy ending, basically.
Yeah, this one there's a glimmer of hope. There's a glimmer of hope. There's a glimmer of sweat, boob-shaped hope.
Yeah, and great hips and a beautiful bob cut, and another great line from Cairo. Again, his adjectives are great. Because Lizard Man, the way he describes the girl, she's like a warm stone, and a warm stone in the sun. That he describes from a lizard gooner's POV.
Lizard brains.
Yeah, lizard goon brain. Comparing a girl to a hot stone is the way you describe a absolute banger bitch. Which it's a very, very lizard-esque way of looking at it, because she literally puts her body on him when he first makes the appointment. She applies heat, literally direct heat.
Well, because he's going into torpor, or brumination, I think it would be. When reptiles lose consciousness, basically.
Oh, you did your research on lizard lore?
No, I just knew what that was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I know what words mean and how to pronounce them.
No word many things.
Try it.
I'm too busy. I'm the Straussian of the group.
You're
busy
right.
Esoteric. You get the cream of the top of the basic knowledge. I do the deep esoteric stuff.
Okay.
I'm glad to know our character classes.
There's no multi-specs here, right? We're all
you cannot multi-class. Yep. IRL.
Maybe some people can. But Lizard Man, of course, our main protagonist certainly does not know how to multi-class. He's a sensitive young Japanese man, and the way he describes transformation is very brutal and realistic. The company that runs the Power Rangers, Kamen Riders or something like that, tries to hire him
that's right,
as a kaiju actor. It's like, so do you spit vomit? Do you spit venom? Do you
Can you walk on the ceiling? What's going on?
He literally spills his spaghetti. He spits on a girl's shoes with sake and bread, and he crawls out of there. And it's a very realistic depiction. And of course, he vomits. He eats a whole chicken in one bite, and he spits out the bones. And he finds his copy of the Metamorphosis under the table, under his bed. And that's when he decides to kill himself. Because, of course, at the end of that story...
re-going over the plot.
Well, basically, the whole point, the whole shtick is that it is a Kafka story because he sees himself as Gregor Samsa's spiritual. Gregor Samsa is his literally me character. It's his.
You're just going right now. This is the third time. All right, I'm cutting it off. Unless you have a unique point.
I'm expanding on my unique, tasteful point here. It is literally a Kafka story because no one explains anything to him. The girl is basically it's a Kafka story of a happy ending. He's like, oh, how can you afford this? Don't worry about it. What's the plan about this? Don't worry. She says, don't worry about it. Don't worry. She constantly says, don't worry about it. She's just being as opaque and not explaining something as the officer in the penal colony. Another Kafka story. The classic Kafka story is the bureaucracy that never explains why you're here or what you're doing. Right? She's doing the exact same thing to him. He doesn't know what the hell's going on, why she's doing this to him. We don't know why the company is spending the big bucks to lavishly do this to him. He's being experimented upon, clearly. He's still being studied. If it was not a cute Asian girl with nice hips and a bob cut, this would be ending a normal Kafka story, which is in terror and horror and isolation. But because, yet again, this is a gender-bent story, much like how Spirit of 87, when it's a girl, it's a good ending. When it's a male, it's a horror ending. When it's the bureaucrat is a female in this situation, it's played off as a Kafka story of a happy ending, right? So it's still as bureaucratic. It's still as nebulous and strange, and the main protagonist still has no idea what's going on. But because there's hips in front of him, it's a positive bent to it. I'm not saying this in an insult way. I'm not saying it as a negative thing, but it's a curious way you could spin. Yeah. If you change the gender of the girl, the tone of the ending, it will be completely different.
Yeah, if there was like a dude standing there in a bikini, real sweaty, if you just had ugly bastard, and he was like, I'm your herpetologist.
Exactly.
That would be much worse. That would be much worse.
It would be a much more straight edge Kafka.
Yeah, it's like, oh God.
A chain-smoking old scientist. He's like, all right, get on the table. I'm going to have to inspect your scales.
Why are you in a bikini, though?
The power of a little bit of sex appeal. And I'll just say, let's call it that. I think we've milked this lizard.
We have absolutely. We are drinking all of the remaining sobe.
Have we scrapped this Schmidt pit? Have we scrapped it?
There's a 90s reference for you.
Yeah, that's a
90s kids will get this.
Yeah. There's still so much to say about the branch, the Baby Yoda tip jar in from the branch.
Yep, there is.
That was a thing, Gabe. That was. And now it's over. Yeah. Okay. Collection as a whole, I think we've already generalities, but yeah, great stuff. I don't know if you guys had any final, take of takes.
Dave, how does it feel to have your didactic system completely destroyed by the new wave?
I vowed not to turn this into a didacticism thing. That's a separate thing. I think Cairo's stuff holds up. I think he's a very talented writer. I really enjoyed this book, and I've added 2 of his stories to the canon.
Well, you know what to say. Cairo is a city in Egypt, and the Nile is also a river that runs through it. And I'm detecting a lot of denial right here.
How long are you sitting on that one? I gotta whip this out. At some point.
Cairo is a city in Illinois, referenced by Mark Twain. Smith is a guy who hammers iron and makes horseshoes.
It's true.
Yeah, we can both do dumb shit.
Hey, mine had effort. There was a setup in there. All right, it was layers to mine.
like an ogre.
Like an ogre.
All right. I think
good.
I think we've yes. I think that we're done.
Let's final leave. Takes. Okay.
What was did we say what our favorite stories were? Kappa was like, well, your favorite story was. Dave, what was your favorite? Because we
did throughout. I would say probably Network States, but close tie with Hunters.
Mostly same. Even if I love Spirit of 87.
I'm Hunters 87 Network State, but yeah.
So we all agree the strongest stories are the first 3, basically.
Well, 2, because I'm not nuts about 87, but yeah, first 2 we're all in alignment on. That's why they're in the canon now.
There are no stinkers, but
yeah.
Other than Locked In, there was no stinkers.
Okay, no. All right, we're not relitigating it.
Yeah, this whole bit is getting cut.
But thank you, anyone that listened. If you listened this far, I'm going to say it. My patented line. End of the episode, gang. Let's practice that voted up. Just like a Hoi 4 YouTuber or something.
Give
really
us a
does help
rating
us.
give us a rating on Spotify. Give us a rating on your podcast apps.
Smash that like button.
That helps us a lot. It really does. Like not kidding. People say that, but it's absolutely true. Because
and don't forget to listen to us on Podbean, by the way. Oh.
I don't even know what that is.
We're not on
Podbean. It's another podcast host.
Yeah, I don't know if we're on that.
Well, just assuming we are. We're decentralized. We're just centralized network of prestige. So.
Yeah, last time I checked, no one on iTunes had ever rated us. So if you're one of those, I know there's a few people on iPhones. Not all of you are Samsung,
Pavo phones,
Android,
like myself.
So yeah, thank you. Good stuff. Good stuff. Check out. I will link at least the first 2 stories because they're freely available out there, and you get the whole series if you really want to support Cairo, which I think he's well deserving of. So thank you.
If you want to add some drops to the new wave.
Bye.
Peace. Planting your girl's face into concrete and plowing her behind the Dunkin' Donuts dumpster. That's what New Wave is. Quote me on that.